Shrutismriti-Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad-Pada-Sankaram Loka-Sankaram Sadashiva-Samarambham Shankaracharya-Madhyamam Asmadacharya-Paryandam Vande Guru-Parambaram. Most respected Professor George Cardona, the senior most Sanskrit scholar in our midst. Dr. C.L. Prabhakar is a well-known Sanskrit scholar and Vedic scholar from Bangalore and at present in the US. Professor Peter Scharf, who hails from Brown University and at present working in Hyderabad in Triple IIT. Dr. Heike Oberlin, whom we would like to call Dr. Priya. Her Indian name is Priya, who is heading the Department of Indology as professor and head in Tubingen University, Germany. Professor K. Vishnu, a well-known grammarian in Kerala and known scholar throughout India, a traditional and modern scholar as far as Sanskrit Vyakarana is concerned, and my colleague, Professor George Cardona, who is now, I think, 85.
Yes.
He is working hard, and while we go through his CV, we will be astonished to see that this Professor George Cardona is not 85, he is only 80. His many works are in the press. Several books are in the script formation, and also several books are under preparation. Three-tier system we see: preparation and writing, and then going to the press. So such a very senior scholar as far as Sanskrit and especially in the field of Vyakarana and linguistics is in our midst to grace this occasion. Andhra Sabha, the president, Shri K. Narayanan-Poti, who is a well-known Vedic scholar, Vice President Shri Madhavan Nambudri, Secretary, my beloved friend Shri Subramanian Musat, Treasurer and the man who is behind organizing all this, looking after the technical aspects of this seminar, Dr. Pradeep Jyoti, directors Dr. Ramamurthy and Dr. Hariharan, the scholars, those who attend this program on virtual platform, my brothers and sisters. Actually, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome this evening session. The scholars who assembled here in this session, as I told you, a galaxy of scholars who have earned name and fame throughout the globe in Vedic literature, in classical literature, in grammar, in linguistics, in so many fields. So first, I welcome Professor George Cardona. My association with Professor George Cardona was more than 30 years, 3 decades. And he was my guest in Shankaracharya University as a guest professor. I could appoint him for more than 1 month as a professor, a visiting professor in my department. And I could see him in his university in Pennsylvania while I was on travel in US. Professor George Cardona needs no what we call introduction, because his contributions are so what we call well known and recognized. I welcome Professor George Cardona to this August Assembly of Scholars on virtual platform and to speak on Panini and Vedangavyakarana. Professor C.L. Prabhakar is a well-known Vedic scholar, the founder president of the Vedanada Adhyayana Kendra in Bangalore, an international institution. He was a long time, he was a professor in the university, both in India and outside. Such a great Vedic scholar, Vedic and Sanskrit, the classical Sanskrit scholar, is chairing today's session. I welcome Professor C.L. Prabhakar to this session to chair. Professor Peter Scharf, who is a pet student of Professor George Cardona in Sanskrit Vyakarana and Linguistics, who studied under him in Pennsylvania University and later became a professor in Brown University, and who worked throughout in US in several universities and also as a visiting professor and also in Indian universities. He is in our midst today to give the keynote paper, The Reduplication and Syllable Structure in Paninian Tradition. I welcome Professor Peter Scharf to this session. Again, Dr. Heike Oberlin, who is professor and head of the Department of Indology in Tubingen University in Germany. She is a well-known artist in Kerala. She is known as a professional artist of KUTIYATTAM and Nangyaramakute in Kerala. She studied in Kerala Kalamandalam, the University for Arts and Cultural Studies. She, at present, she is the professor and head of Tubingen University, the Department of Indology. I welcome her to this this meaningful event, academic event of the Kandal Sabha and Shala. Professor Dr. Oberlin. Last but not least, Professor K. Vishnu, who is one of my close friends in academic affairs. We have jointly, it is a great pleasure to point out now that myself and Professor Vishnu, when we were together in Shankaracharya University, we worked together in several books, and we could unearth one unpublished Sanskrit commentary on Prakriya Sarvasva, the grammar text of Madhpattur Narayana Bhatta, the great grammarian. And that commentary was published by both of us jointly with a very scholarly introduction by Professor George Cardona. That was one of the greatest gifts in our life as far as academic, that scholarly introduction given by Dr. Cardona, which runs to several pages. it gave the weight to that publication. And Professor Vishnu was instrumental, and he was the man behind in helping me in publishing that book. And like that, he is a great scholar, traditional scholar, who is very thorough in Vyakarana, Sanskrit Vyakarana, and several other Shastras. And he is well known in India. In several universities, he is an expert. And he is a very good scholar in the field of Vakyartha. I welcome Professor Vishnu to our August assembly. We have to conduct the session strictly on our time schedule, and now I welcome all the scholars, those who participate in this session, a very meaningful session where great scholars are going to be deliver their speech on various aspects of Veda and Vyakarana. I welcome all the members of the Kandalur Sabha and Kandalur Shala, and my close friends who are working in the Kandalur office, and also the scholars, those who participate on virtual platform from different corners of the globe. I once again welcoming all. I beg to remain. I request Professor C.L. Prabhakar to deliver his presidential paper. Professor C.L. Prabhakar.
Namaste to everybody who are
Namaste,
gathered
namaste.
here. Namaste, Namaha. It's a great pleasure to be among this Jnana Sabha, where so many scholars have joined from different countries, including India. So it is the base is India. And I really congratulate and feel very happy for the type of function, a seminar that is being conducted with a wonderful topic, the roots of the systems of knowledge, roots in Vedic literature. So it's such a wonderful topic, explorable anytime.
Sorry. May I interfere once? We have to perform one prayer that I missed, that we will conduct now. Actually, it is my mistake that I have missed that. So I invite Srimati Lakshmi E, a student of great scholars and granddaughter of Dr. C. Kunjan Raja, a great Sanskrit scholar, Vedic scholar, to present her prayer. Sorry, Lakshmi, I missed it.
It's okay, sir.
We have to start now. This is the right time to start.
Okay, sir. Gajananam Bhutaganadisevitam Kapitthajambobhalasarabhakshitam Umasutam Shogavinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwara Padapankajam Mahaganapatim Manasa Smarami Mahaganapatim Manasa स्मरामि महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि महागणपतिं वसिष्ठवामदेवादिवन्दितमहागणपतिं वसिष्ठवामदेवादिवन्दितमहागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि। महादेवसुतम् महादेवसुतं गुरुगुहनुतं महादेवसुतं गुरुगुहनुतं महादेवसुतं गुरुगुहनुतं मानकोटि प्रकाशं शान्तं महादेवसुतं गुरुगुहनुतं मानकोटि प्रकाशं शान्तं महाकाव्यनाटकादिप्रियम् महाकाव्यनाटकादिप्रियं मूषिकवाहनमोदकप्रियं महाकाव्यनाटकादिप्रियं मूषिकवाहनमोदकप्रियं महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि महागणपतिं वसिष्ठवामदेवादिवन्दितमहागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि।
Thank you, Lakshmi, for your beautiful presentation, this invocation. Now I request Professor C.L. Prabhakar to start his presidential paper.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Agne Naya Supatharaye Asman Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidwan Yuyodhyasmadjuhuranameno Bhuyishtham Te Namavuktim Vidhema Om Shanti 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 Gnananandamayam Devam Nirmalaspatikakrutim Adharam Sarvavidyanam Hayagrivam Upasmahe Hayagrivam Upasmahe. Thank you very much for the opportunity that has been provided to me by Dr. Murali Madhavan and all of you in this wonderful Sabha. But I have been asked to talk the chairman's speech. I never expected that. But anyway, I am very much obliged and thankful to all of you that I am simple, very much simple, not much very good scholar and all that. But still, I feel to share a few ideas on this important topic, that is the knowledge system, Indian knowledge system. In fact, Indian knowledge system is simply very wide and has been coming to us. So Guru Parampara is there, a lot of that. But when he proposed that kind of topic, and I felt like choosing the knowledge system based in Upanishads and more focusing upon this Taittiriya Upanishad. And this is what I am going to share a few ideas on this. And so in the Gnananandamayam Slokam, we have an implied prayer for the Hayagriva, who is supposed to be the Mahavishnu himself, and who comes in the form of a rishi in order to initiate and impart knowledge on Lalita Parameswari. So Lalita Sahasranama, Sri Vidya has been initiated to the Agastya Maharshi. Therefore, such a great Maharshi, such a great God, Mahavishnu, and he is the source for all systems of knowledge. And we have to know about this Spatika Mala, which is mentioned, which is born by him, Spatika Mala or Spatikam, and that is said to be the Spatika stone. The crystal stone is supposed to be the sound absorber, the recorder of voice and sounds. And so when decoded, the sounds through the sounds recorded through asterisks, the knowledge correspondingly becomes downloaded. And so this is the wonderful way of recording in ancient times. And this is true when Varuna Maharshi said only through hard work and research work, with focus, one can get knowledge of different layers of Brahman and Gnanam and whatever it is. So that's what Tapasa Brahma Vijignasasva Tapo Brahmeti. And Brahma also is the knowledge graded that could be systematized later on. And knowledge, Gnanam, is Dharma signature for humans. As said, Dharmo hi tesham adhiko visesho dharmena hinaha pasubhis samanaha. So those who do not know and practice Dharma, they are like the beast. Pasu is the beast. So actually, Dharma regulates positive goals, and it is Gnana and Vijnana, and that also leads to the Adhyatma Gnana and Tattva Gnana Artha Darshanam, which is very important for the human life. All this set is directed to utility of human span of life and emancipation, that there is no repetition of birth at all, because whatever birth that we have been granted by Paramatma must be utilized appropriately. See that we grow more, so we turn out to be Gnanins. And Gnana, as all know, is a source of bliss and tool for removal of fear and danger, leading to peace, Shanti. So when we drop our fear, Shanti automatically comes to us. Even in these 6 enemies, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, etc., when we drop down that Asuya, Matsara, then we become completely controlled. So in Bhagavad-Gita, another important text, which is the essence of all Upanishads, all secret knowledge, Bhagavan Krishna uttered that knowledge in the form of activity, yajnas, have been created by Prajapati. And when Prajapati created the beings, he created the beings, people, along with the yajna, along with the work. Because without work, if creation is there, they get confused. So the timetable, how they can modulate their span of life, or what is the activity that they can afford to take up, that is what is already created before. Sahayagnaha prajaha srishtva. That's the expression you have got. Then the people who are born will engage themselves in the acquisition of gnana to the possible extent, and they will have a kind of Atma Bodha, and which is all possible through the teacher's instruction, rather Guru Bodha. See, Atma Buddhi Sukham Chaiva, Guru Buddhir Viseshataha. And moreover, our India or Bharat is very much famous for 2 things. That is oral tradition. From teacher to teacher, the whole knowledge has been imparted. And on the other hand, the memory power, the calculative power is simply grand for all those born here. That's what for mathematics and philosophy, our Indian mind is really proverbial. And so the Guru Parampara, which has not broken any time, has been taking place, and it's all become. That's why we have got Smruti and Spruti. Both texts are there for us for exploring our knowledge. And as our Murali Madhavan started, Sruti Spurti Purananam Alayam. So our Shankaracharya, the Guru, is the Alaya for Smruti and Sruti. And his works are simply indicative of so much of layers of knowledge and the roots of knowledge also we can. And again, there are several theories explaining the birth, the need, and the practice of Gnana. And all must try to turn to Gnanarjana, whatever it is. In Durga Saptasati, Markandeya Maharshi points out to us that Sarvasya Buddhirasti, all people born have been blessed with Buddhi. And that Buddhi has got to be manipulated very well and understood. And that is all that is systematized for convenience and which stands for eternity. And therefore, knowledge got systematized. And for this, several rishis, saints, philosophers have been constantly working from time to time. But as we know, unsystematized knowledge is perishable. And if at all it exists, it is not long lasting. Therefore, system, the siksha, the other way we call, is an order and comprehensive one, spreading its wings in many fields of human knowledge. Owing to that, people get attracted to master, to research, however possible, through the support of acharyas and self-intelligence. See, Swabuddhi is always there, Swatma is there. That we will be able to uncover when we approach the knowledge corpus. And moreover, this is possible through several publications and several teachings, etc. And therefore, there are many sources, the possible sources for us besides the individualized intuitive knowledge and experience. For all this, the root directive is Dhatu Prasada. In Mahanarayana Upanishad, you say Dhatu Prasadat Matam Mahimama Pasyati. That you were able to uncover a lot of knowledge because of the support of divine. That's what we talk about Saraswati. The goddess Saraswati, the flow. When she is constant flow, educating us, developing us into different layers. And again, the knowledge is Veda, and that is primarily available to us in 4 ways. One, hymnology, that is Rigveda, where you should have the technology to please the powers from whom we have to get some kind of favor, some kind of benefit. So that hymnology is Rigveda, where you have got the knowledge of the gods, various things. And moreover, we know Rigveda is the first work where there is secular and religious and other kinds of matter there. For example, Sayanacharya, when he commented, he wrote Bhumika, and his commentary is very much important because he touched so many aspects apart from the sacrificial explanations. And also, hymnology gets us into the politeness. Rigveda gives us the Vinitatva. And when we submit our prayers, naturally all honorable individuals will become happy. And we are also reminding the individual potentialities that each God possessed, and that potency we want to derive from them respectively. And we seek their grace, and that would enhance our happiness, intelligence, and knowledge, and also good behavior. And when such notable persons were to come to us, how best they can be satiated, that particular part of guest worship or Atiti Puja and the formulas and content of all that has been given to us in the next Yajurveda. That is the purview of Yajurveda, where the invited guests are given food, honor, and other things, so that they become absolutely happy and they will bless. And those who gather, they would be made delighted. That is possible through songs and chants and formulas, which are many times magical. So, and another part of knowledge that we have got is Samaveda, where the same mantras are set to music for entertainment. And so people get entertained when that Samagana takes place. Even gods are always praised as the Samagana Lolas. They are fond of Samagana. And Tyagaraja, the great saint philosopher, has understood that gods need not always be Samagana Lolas. They should be also Manava Gana Lola, Manava Santana Gana Lola. So to say, there's all the kind of work that they have been, that our scholars have been doing. And as we know, we have the Atharva Veda in Indian enterprise and in sacrifice, which is people's Veda. And here there are many mantras to unravel the depths of each of the secrets. And moreover, Atharva Veda is known to be having a maximum number of Upanishads, the secret knowledge which has got to be explored, Atharva. There are also measures and scales for maintaining the good health and also trying to get rid of the problems and difficulties that occur to human life from time to time. And therefore, Atharva Veda is also a very important Veda where you find roots for a number of branches of knowledge and also scientific explorations and all that. Therefore, actually the word Atharva, there are several names for that. One is Atharva is, Tharva is pain. Atharva is removal of pain. Of course, though Atharva Maharshi and all that is there, but basically Atharva means a tool that we can get rid of the pain and problem to our body, mind and spirit, and we can grow more than. Therefore, it is said to understand the systems of knowledge with the knowledge itself. Because Yajnena, we have got a wonderful clue given in our Veda that Yajnena Yajnamayajanta Devaha Tani Dharmani Pradhamanyasan. So this is a wonderful suggestion or instruction given to us that try to understand knowledge through knowledge, perform yajna through yajna. So to say, something like removing the mullu with mullu, vajram vajrena bhidyate. So understand the samhitas with the mantras available in them only. That's what our professor, Dr. N.J. Shende, used to always say, that understand the Rigveda with the Rigveda mantras himself. So that is the best way of interpretation and trying to know primarily to unearth the roots of knowledge in our Vedas. And so this kind of suggestion will help us for the enhancement and gaining more and more knowledge, because, and this is otherwise called meta knowledge. That is what the culmination of knowledge lies ultimately in the Upanishads. Of course, I don't want to talk about the different periods and different forms of our Vedas, growing from Samhita, Brahmanas, Sutras, Aranyakas, and so on. I now just immediately come to this Upanishads, which is a very wonderful field of literature where all people like and pursue and not satisfied. And still they keep on doing work upon various Upanishads. How many Upanishads are there? It's a good question. But many, many Upanishads are there. And we only limit the number by saying 10 Upanishads or 108 Upanishads, like that. But Upanishads is a stage where several thousands of seers and saints and philosophers contributed from time to time their knowledge, their thinking, to enrich the windowful thoughts on body, mind, and spirit, and turn them into the channels of Lokagnana, the mundane knowledge, and ultimately to Brahmagnana, knowledge on the Creator and Supreme Being, and ultimately merge into Brahmananda. Because in Parisha Sukta is a very important text for us to know roots for many branches of knowledge. And because The Paramatma will not take birth, but will cause everybody to come into the world. And he will give opportunity and faculties that they can pursue, that they can pursue their respective knowledge and make the entire world filled with knowledge as long as they exist. So each Veda has a system by name Upanishad, a secret knowledge. Here there is the involvement of both teacher and taught. So whenever Upanishadic knowledge, whenever secret knowledge has to come to us, we must seek the teacher, because the teacher has got some kind of expertise and experience and depth of knowledge. But the teachers that we have in our India, our rishis, they are never egoistic at all. So, for example, in Taittiriya Upanishad, it is said, Eke spusreya gumso brahmanaha tesham tvayasanena prasvasitavyam. So you can go to any other scholar other than me after learning, and you can improve your knowledge. That kind of generality is very important in our Indian professor system. So, and moreover, we always begin our studies in Veda, our knowledge gain, with the prayer, Sahana avatu, Sahanau bhunaktu, Sahaviryam karavavahai, and Tejasvina vadhitamastu. So this is a wonderful suggestion that, so avatu means whatever knowledge we learn, that knowledge must be a protective and upholding our interests, both teacher and taught. And the taught, if at all he grows more and more powerful in knowledge and unearthing so many things, the teacher is being complimented. The credit goes to the teacher. Oh, who is your guru? Under whom we have learned? That's the question. And so Guru's name comes into that. That's why Sahana Vavatu, they are likewise, even for Guru also the same Kirti. And Bhunattu means whatever knowledge has been acquired that must come into our experience. So education is to know what you know, to know what you do not know. One of the definitions most important. So when we know what we do not know, we'll be adding things to our knowledge. That's what's Bhunattu. And Sahaviryam karavavahi. Viryam is both must work. So the teacher's head multiplied with the student's head will be the easy solution for us. That's what our algebra professor used to say. How do you get the solution? Your head multiplied by my head is equal to the answer. So then again, Viryam karavavahi. Ultimately, the most important thing, Tejasvina vadu. So whatever learning that we have been pursuing and sharing, most important, that should bring name and fame, not only the subject, but also the worker. So both worker and knowledge both go together. That's why Tejasvina avatu. In fact, I remember when Dr. Radhakrishnan came to Pune to release the completion of the Mahabharata project, Mahabharata volumes, Bhandarkar Institute, Pune, they had put on the banner the slogan, I mean the motto, Tejasvina avatu, because they spent a lot of years to complete a critical edition of Mahabharata, and so ultimately that Mahabharata should give us the Tejas. And finally, everybody is born with this in Kama, Krodha, Moha, and as I told, the hatred, Dvesha, and jealous must vanish from us as we grow more and more in the knowledge seeking and all become matured in that. That's why Ma Vidvishavahai is a beautiful thing. No Dvesha, either to the teacher or to the student or to the sharers. There should be happiness. When that happiness reigns, and he would be a real scholar. So real scholar is that who is able to appreciate the enhancement of knowledge coming down from all directions. That's what in Rigveda we see, Ano Bhadraha Kratavo Yantu Viswataha. So we are from all directions, we should admit. When we open all windows of our hall, then we get more light and air like that. So these two must vanish in between the teacher and taught and all people to do good for the prosperity of knowledge pursued by them. Because the knowledge is never individual. Before Veda, before knowledge, Jnana Saraswati, everybody is a seeker, everybody is a lower person, so they have to prostrate to the feet of that. And each Upanishad is a tool, is a vidya for any systematic upasana, a practice to grow higher in pursuits. Upanishads both save knowledge of realities, tattvas, and point out the unreal things too, which look attractive and diverting our focus. Mind is worked up to streamline the same. So Mahanarayana Upanishad has got one sukta about this Medha Devi. And when it is said, Medha Manisha Ma Vishatagum Samichi, and so that Medha Sukta, we can always think of it because the knowledge system is ruled in that. So that Medha Devi, Saraswati, has to come to us with a smiling face. Medha and Manisha, knowledge and wisdom, both must go hand in hand. Without wisdom, the knowledge will not be workable. Therefore, and moreover, Medha is providing intelligence and discretional knowledge. So these add to the knowledge systems to get explored. Actually, as I told, the number of Upanishads is not final any time. We go on getting, for example, we have got an Allah Upanishad, some unheard Upanishads names are coming into light. Then we get really happy. Oh, we don't know how many Kaivalya Upanishads. The names of the Upanishads are very many, and moreover, they are very much suggestive in that. And so we got to know a few very much popular and get filled. Among several Upanishads, which go on to explain the realm of philosophical and scientific knowledge, Taittiriya Upanishad of Yajurveda, Krishna Yajurveda, also strikes importance at its own level to let know the knowledge system as graded. The topics covered in the Upanishads touch the Ananda heights ultimately. And here also there is a graduation of steps and settling at the system of extreme bliss, Brahmananda. There are 3 divisions, as we all know that, and the divisions are named as Vallis. Valli is a creeper, and the creeper's life depends upon the support that it gets. That is the sturdiness of the tree to which the creeper is being made to cling and grow. And therefore, we have the 3 Vallis or Shiksha Valli, and then we have got that Bhrugavalli, and then we have the next one is the Brahmajnana Shiksha Valli, Bhrugavalli and Ananda Valli. These Vallis are there, which everybody must be reading. But what is that Shiksha Valli? Basically, whenever we want to understand the Veda and know the secrets and also the glory of the Vedas, that's what or Murali Madhavan put it as a root, where from the whole thing arises. We should want Shiksha, the rules of pronunciation, and also knowledge about the Ruta and Satyam, some of such great concepts, where from the whole thing comes up. So the rules of pronunciation of Veda mantras, that is what we say Varna, Swaraha, Matra, Balam, all that has been very well explained. In the Bhrugavalli, it is a dialogue because our Upanishads and our Vedas tell that you can impart knowledge through the method of dialogue. So when 2 people come into dialogue, naturally so much of knowledge will be there. It will be academic and religious and important secret knowledge also. And that is to determine what is that Brahman and what are the means to get hold of the intricacies in the concept of Brahman and realizing the Ananda. So Ananda Valli takes the prominence in that. Ananda Valli is to measure the bliss and steps to climb on to the heights of Ananda, and which we call it, which begins from Manushananda, goes up to Brahmananda, and in between what kind of Anandas are there, and all that Ananda Mimamsa is very well explained to us. That is investigation into the layers of bliss and effort to reach the ultimate. And it is ensured that if one were to know the Brahmananda, he would be free and gets true knowledge of Brahman, that is Atmanam Sprunute. Because we are always talking about the Atma, body and soul. But whatever we do, culture, education, habits, good behavior, all that must go to the Atma inside, while body is only a tool. That's why Sariram Adyam Khalu Sadhanam. That's what Kalidas has taught us, that Adya Sadhana is Sarira. But all that sadhana, the results of it will go to the Atma. And in the word Valli connotes the liability for any extent of growth or to any height, depending on the strength of the tree to which the crawling creeper can cling and twine to rise to the height of it. For example, the other day when I went to Delhi, I happened to see the money plant with such a big leaves and growing very so strong. Actually, we keep the small piece of money plant in the water bottle or in pot or like that. We don't see the rich growth of that particular plant. But I was wondering, so it all depends upon the atmosphere, and many factors make that knowledge grow up like Valli, and we'll become very happy when that Valli becomes strong and very much well with a bumper growth. And that is a form of knowledge system. Actually, when knowledge becomes systematized and regularized, the validity and longevity, sustainability, and all that would be very much great. And there will be also the art of seeking. See, in art of seeking the knowledge and going to deep into the depths. And moreover, such type of knowledge will stand the test of time, and that always turns to be a useful inspiration and giving us more and more insights. And we know these important divisions of this Taittiriya Upanishad for the acquisition of and management of human requirement of refinement and character and conduct will be very much important. And another important thing is that whenever it called knowledge, we cannot simply take it like the newspaper reading. It is a very hard reading. The more and more times you read or study, put your insights into that, you will be getting more and more new meaning. For example, Ramayana or Mahabharata or Bhagavatam, these are all very great Vedas or great texts which have been read and read and read. For example, also Bhagavad-Gita. There is a library of work done on Bhagavad-Gita. If at all you arrange the works on Bhagavad-Gita, it's a big, we require many buildings to just know what truth is like that. Then, and also this requirement of refinement, yes. Apart from that, all Upanishads provide systematized knowledge, clearing doubts and educating the mind for finer, sensible life and enjoyment. Actually, in Bhagavad-Gita, it's also Upanishad Sara. Bhagavad-Gita Su, Upanishad Su, Brahma Vidyayam, Yoga Shastre. That is how the colophon reads. So Upanishad Su means all Upanishad Sara has been implied in that Bhagavad-Gita. And there we have these pure divisions: body, then Indriyas, mind, Buddhi, and Parabuddhi. So the mind is sandwiched between the Indriyas and Buddhi. Therefore, the mind can fall upon the Indriyas, make us hopeless, or the mind can listen to the Buddhi and Parabuddhi and grow more and more and get emancipation. It's a beautiful steps in analysis that our Krishna has shown to us in Bhagavad-Gita, likewise in other Upanishads. And moreover, and we get such a good secret of knowledge. For example, Taittiriya Upanishad is also belonging to Rigveda, is a wonderful Upanishad, very short but very significant. In that we have got reference to the creation and birth. It is said that the being to be born is first sowed into the man from the air. I don't know, it's Paramatma's activity. He puts that seed in the man, and that man imparts or deposits that seed in the woman's womb, and the womb, the woman gives the form, shape, and etc. Meanwhile, when the complete formation of the baby is far done, Paramatma will interfere and put the calendar of life. That's why in making that Vishwani Vayunani Veda, in that Vayunani are being recorded or written down to the baby between 5th and 7th month, and then it is delivered into the world. Although the baby fights with the Paramatma, why at all you are sending me back into this? I don't want. But Paramatma convinces, no, you have got some more things to do with, go on. Then the baby is delivered. So this kind of idea, how the creation, how the babies or how the creation comes into being, given the Taittiriya Upanishad, is a wonderful idea. So the being gets all calendar of life while in the womb. So like that, and again, when we go to the Kathopanishad, which everybody knows, the knowledge system is completely different, and more learning there also. And there also we have got interesting dialogue between Yama and the Brahmin boy, Nachiketa. You know, Nachiketa, as we all know that, he has been given to Yama by his father. Actually, thoughtless he was, but whatever Maharshis say, it will have always a lot of validity. See, Rishibhashitam, Namithya Rishibhashitam. When father gave away to Yama, that boy sincerely goes to Yama's place, but Yama was absent. There was outboard for Yama's house, mansion. So patiently waited there for 3 days. When Yama returns, finds a boy waiting for him, a Brahmin boy, waiting for him. Instead of becoming angry, he became very karunavan. And there was a dialogue, as all of us know, in Katha. Katha actually means distress, Upanishad. So Kathopanishad is a tool how best we can remove the distress that we have all got when we are born and when we are living. So the Yama, the Lord of Death, he has to give that Vidya, that Yama Vidya, that is what Agni Vidya he gave. In fact, although so many attractive things are offered to Nachiketa, Nachiketa did not agree for any one of them, but he insisted, I want the divine fire, the Divya Agni, I want to take it down to the earth. Then Yama tried to give that Agni Vidya, and he only said, what Agni, Divya Agni, which you are taking down the earth, that will go after your name, Nachiketa Vidya. So Nachiketa Vidya is very important upasana, and that you get more about in Aruna Prashna, Nachiketa Vidya. So apart from the Adhyatmic knowledge, which very few people are interested. These days, people are interested in the mundane knowledge and the problems and the crisis that is coming on, and how best we can use our scientific technology and modern technology and see that we get some kind of relief and comfort and make the virus, etc., to vanish. So, but that kind of clue also is there in our Vedas. So Vedas are not simply philosophical treatises or religious texts. It is a library by itself, as Arnold said. Veda is a library. In library, you can get books or works done on various branches of knowledge, and that's what is folds of Saraswati. So scientific knowledge also can be rational. Scientific knowledge can also be. So if a physicist sees Rigveda and our Vedas, he sees a lot of physics there, and everything, all branches, all faculties, and therefore knowledge, by its definition, is universal and cannot be divided as one and all that, like that, no sectionalization. And as I mentioned, the Rutam cha satyam cha abhidhat tapasodhyajayata tato ratrirajayata, like that we have got many mantras correspondingly, but Rutam and Satyam. Rutam is a cosmic law binding the gods, the divine beings and other people, and Satyam is the mundane one. Basically, all people living upon the earth are to abide. But between the Rutam and Satyam, the Bhisha is one which connects. So if Bhayam, Bhisha is there, the Bhiti is there, then everybody will be very much disciplined. And when discipline is there, the knowledge will definitely grow up. Therefore, we see the knowledge roots are laid in the Vedas and whose wings are very wide, and they are declared to be very much Sanatanam. See, when I say the word wings, there is one theory that the entire Vedas have been brought by the celestial bird Vainateya, that is Garuda, and he brought the knowledge to earth. So we always make a lot of regard and respect before we study our Vedas, Vedic Vedas. So Gnana is multidisciplinary, and everybody has opening to pursue their own respective interests and master the knowledge in their own possible vistas, and ultimately shine in the academic and business world of activity, which will be very much useful for posterity in all respects. So everybody knows that Veda answers the faculty of search, and so the attention to explore Veda mantra rasi, so Veda mantra rasi, and which has been classified by our Vyasa Bhagavan, and therefore he gets a credit as Veda Vyasa because he has worked upon the Vedas, classified the Vedas to give us some kind of scientific thinking. What is Ruk, what is Ritus, what is and all that.
Sir,
So
this
I'm
is a gentle reminder. This is gentle reminder that you have only 2 minutes more.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm coming to that, and I am aware of this time looking at it. Thank you very much for reminding me. 2 minutes is too much for me. So the mantra rasi that we have got, and it is said that Ananta vai Vedaha. So though we talk about 4 Vedas, no, Ananta vai Vedaha. What are the other 4 Vedas? That is also a point to explore, and that has been done too. So, when we explore that, it is the trying to study and explore the roots and benefits and rewards and awards and all that from our knowledge is an unending effort and enterprise which is live to all people at all generations at all times. So with these few words, I like to conclude and thank all people who are here, and especially to Murali Madhavan. I have met him long back in Kerala itself and visited that Kerala Sankaracharya University. The faculty there are my good friends. They are coming and sharing their knowledge in our Radhaveda Kendra series of lectures every month these days. And Dr. Murali, Dr. Neelakanthan started that, he inaugurated. Then we have got Murali Madhavan, then we have Ravindran, and also that. So all these Kerala scholars are coming too, and I have also the pleasure of visiting the Sankaracharya University, and the word Sankara is simply Sankara only. Sankaraha Sankaro Bhaguva. There is no second alternate word for that. Shamkaroti is Sankaraha. And he is a Mayaskara also. Sankara is providing the mundane knowledge. Mayaskara is giving us the emancipation because of that mundane excellence. So Namaha Sankaraya Mayaskaraya. That's what is the consecutive compliment given to Rudra, Rudra. So with these few words, Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much. Sarvesham Subhamastu. Sri Ram. Yes,
thank you, Professor C.L. Prabhakar. It is a very excellent paper, a very scholarly presentation in a very simple way. A very tough subject, how you can put it in a very simple, that is the art of teaching. And that is what we have experienced in your paper. So the paper itself is self-explanatory. So there is no need of any summing up of that paper. So we are highly indebted to you. Kandor Shala is a new institute. This is a revival. This institute is a revival of a erstwhile university in Kerala, Kandor Shala, and we are trying to revive the whole tradition. And we are happy that Professor C.L. Prabhakar has responded very positively our invitation and gave a very elegant lecture. Thank you, Professor Prabhakar. Now we will move to the second paper. Peter Scharf is has joined or not? Peter Scharf?
No, not yet.
Professor Peter Scharf?
He is not joined so far.
Yeah. So we will now invite Professor George Cardona ji. Professor George Cardona will be presenting. I invite him to present his special paper as guest of honor of this session. And his subject is Panini and Vedanga-Vyakarana.
Thank you. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Yenakshara samamnaya madhigamya maheshwarat kritsnam vyakaranam proktam tasmai paninaye namaha. Yena dhauta girah punsam vimalai shabdavarimhi tamascha jnanajam bhinnam tasmai paninaye namaha. Bhakyakaram vararuchim bhashyakaram patanjalim Paninim sutrakarencha pranatosmi munitrayam. Friends, colleagues, guests, I am honored to have been invited by Professor P.C. Murli Madhavan as a guest of honor during this function. And I'm grateful to him for agreeing to schedule me for today instead of Friday, as was originally planned, and I could not make it. Professor Murli Madhavan asked that I speak on the topic of Panini and the Vedanga-Vyakarana, and I acceded to his request, although the topic is one that has occupied scholars for centuries, even millennia, and there is little that I can add that is absolutely new. I can only echo Jayanta Bhatta when he says, Kutova nutanam vastu bhaktum vayam utprekshitum kshamaha vacho vinyasa vaichitriya matramatra vicharyatam. Nevertheless, and being absolutely unable to match Jayanta's style and wit, I consider the subject important in the history of Indian thought and its Vedic foundations, so that it is worthwhile to consider once more what ancient scholars had to say, bringing out aspects not emphasized before. Two verses of the Paniniya Shiksha, which predates Bhartrihari, correlate the 6 Vedangas with parts of the body, and Vyakarana is given chief status. Chanda padotu vedasya hastau kalpotha patyate jyotisham ayanam chakshur niruktam shrotra muchyate shiksha ghanam tu vedasya mukham vyakaranam smritam tasmat sangamadhityeva brahmaloke mahiyate. This emphasizes the oneness of the Vedanga, of the Vedangas, and that they all contribute to the knowledge of one entity in different ways. And 3 of these Vedangas are most intimately connected with language as such: Shiksha, Vyakarana, and Nirukta. The domains of these are well known and described in various texts. I need not to quote here. It is noteworthy that Haradatta Mishra, the commentator on the Kashika, says that Shiksha makes known the way one should pronounce mantras both at the time of studying and during the performance of rituals. Shikshapi adhyayana kale karmani cha mantranam charana prakaram pratipadayati. This links Shiksha intimately with Vedic usage. Nevertheless, we also see an early generalization of this knowledge, so that Shiksha deals not only with Vedic pronunciation, but with the properties of sounds in general, not with respect to any particular Vedic work. This is already true of the Apishala Shiksha. Moreover, two texts that are most intimately connected with the Veda, two Pratishakyas, the Taittiriya Pratishakya of the Krishna Yajurveda and the Rik Pratishakya, contain chapters which deal with speech production in general. For example, the Taittiriya says, Atha Shabdotpattihi, and then goes on to speak of modifications of this Shabda. Samvrite Kanthe Nadaha Kriyate, Vivrite Shvasaha, Madhyeha Karaha, Ta Varna Prakritayaha. That is, these are the basic constituents of speech sounds: nada, shvasa, and hakara, depending on how this airflow is modified as it goes through the kantha, the vocal, the glottal aperture. In addition, the Rik Pratishakya also describes in Partana 16 through 18 Vedic metrical structures, so that it deals with chandaha. And some of what it says is matched in Pingala's Chanda Sutra. On the other hand, Pingala's treatise is not limited to Vedic meters. Nor is Panini's Shabdanushasana, Vyakaranam, which may be considered the prime representative of the Vedanga Vyakarana, limited to Vedic usage. Quite the contrary. Vedic usage here has the status of being exceptional. Paninian sutras do indeed oppose the domains of Lokika and Vedika usage, using the terms bhasha and chandas, bhashayam chandasi. But the bhasha is treated as the main object of description, with Vedic usage being the exception. This is historically appropriate, for the rules which apply in the bhasha also apply in general for Vedic, and Panini can enumerate, for example, particular verb endings that occur in Veda, such as tana and tana instead of ta, in imperative forms such as dadhatana instead of dhatta, an ending like masi instead of mas, in forms such as dipayamasi instead of dipayamaha, and instead of, and the ma instead of in what we call first singular forms such as vadhim instead of avadhisham. Moreover, Panini makes clear that his information is different for the bhasha and Vedic usage. In the case of bhasha usage, he can state authoritatively where, including dialects, what applies, what operations apply where, including in certain dialects. But for Vedic, it is common that he uses the term bahulam variously, showing that the texts which came down to him did not suffice for him to state definitive distributions. Bahulam is traditionally said to apply as follows: Kvachit pravrittihi, kvachid apravrittihi, kvachid vibhasha, kvachid anya deva. Vidher vidhanam bahudhasam iksha, chatur vidham bahulakam vadanti. this is a great variation showing that it is impossible to narrow things in this wide range of text that he has before him. Moreover, there are developments within Sanskrit, within the Bhasha, such that that have not been carried out completely, such that Panini will say things such as Anyesham api drishyate. This applies to other sounds, but he doesn't specify them. He simply says drishyate. We will come back to that in a moment. Now, reflecting this relative status of the Veda and the Lokika usage, when Patanjali specifies which correct forms constitute the domain of Panini Shabdanushasana, he names Lokika forms first. The Mahabhashya begins, Atha Shabdanushasanam. Athetyayan Shabdaha Adhikara Artha Prayujyate. Shabdanushasanam Shastram Adhikritam Veditavyam. Then he asks, Keshan Shabdanam. And the answer is, Lokikanam Vedikanam cha. That is, the Lokika words come first. In addition, Patanjali gives 5 major compelling reasons, prayojanani, why grammar is to be studied. The question is posed, Kani Puna Shabdanushasana prayojanani? And the answer is, Raksho Hagama Lagho Sandeha Prayojanam. Taken as a single whole, they are Raksha, Uha, Agama, Laghu, and Asandeha. It is noteworthy that the first purpose given is the preservation of the Vedas, Raksha. Only one who is informed about deletion, Lopa, augments, Agama, and sound modification, Varnavikaraha, will preserve the Veda properly. Patanjali actually says, Rakshartham Vedanam Adhyayam Vyakaranam Lopagama Varnavikara Gyohi Samyak Vedan Paripalayishyati. Now it's interesting to take one example of this. Kayata illustrates deletion and augmenting, Lopa and Agama. With one form, Aduhra, which occurs in the Veda, instead of the Lokika form, Aduhata, they milked. In terms of Paninian grammar, this involves several operations. The ta of the ending ata is replaced by 0, lopasta atmane padeshu. And the second a of the resulting element sequence is the single replacement for both vowels, atogune. In addition, the ending receives the initial augment root. And there we have a rule that says bahulan chandasi. That is that this augment occurs variously in chandas. Now it's interesting what Kayata says here is that someone who does not know grammar might commit the error of considering aduhra a wrong form. On the other hand, one who knows grammar recognizes that a form like aduhra has been explained by Panini and consequently knows that this is equivalent to the Lokika form, aduhata, and then he can determine what the Vedic text means and understand it. Now, Nagesha says something interesting there. The term that Kayata uses is bhramyet, might commit an error. And Nagesha glosses this and says, Bhramena pathantaram kalpayet ityartha. In error, such a person might posit kalpayet, a variant reading, a different reading. And this, of course, has to be avoided. That the proper maintenance of the Vedas is given first among the reasons for studying grammar is noteworthy. This places Vyakarana in a clear position as a Vedanga in the sense of a Vedopakaraka, something that helps the Vedas, keeps them from suffering corruption. Also important is that this shows that the Vedas were seen as possibly subject to modification and corruption. In this context, we should recall that after describing the proper properties of sounds and how they enter into sandhi, close junction, the Rikpratishakya devotes a chapter, Partala 14, to explaining faults, doshaha, of pronunciation that are viewed as the result of three major factors: adding a segment, aya, leaving out a segment, apaya, and changing the properties of a segment, yatana. In addition, the same text, Rikpratishakya, says that one should pronounce the three tones, udatta, anudatta, and swarita, in such a way that they are not confused. Asandigdhan. That where tone sandhi applies, one should pronounce the single vowel that is combined two tones, so that the tones are not pronounced separately. That one should not pronounce with kampa in a sing-song fashion, which Uvata attributes to Southerners, and that udatta and anudatta should not be pronounced so as to separate their qualities too much. That is, one should not make the udatta too high, nor the anudatta too low. Again, it shows that obviously some people were reciting the Vedic text in a faulty manner, and Shaunaka points these out to say that faults should be avoided. A mistaken usage could have drastic results, as it is illustrated by the well-known legend, which I will not repeat here, of Twashtri trying to gain vengeance against Indra. Indra had invaded his yagya, drunk up the soma. Twashtri takes what remains of the soma, pours it into the fire, and commands the fire to grow as he wants it to be the killer of Indra. He says, Indra Shatrur Vardhaswa. Now, he mispronounced the term Indra Shatruhu. He meant to use this as a Shashtitat Purusha, Indrasya Shatruhu, Shatayita, meaning slayer of Indra, with high pitch on the final vowel, samasasya, but he mistakenly kept the original udatta syllable of Indra, thus pronouncing a bahuvrihi. Paniniyan Sutras bahuvriho prakritya purva padam, meaning he whose destroyer is Indra. As the Maitrayani Samhita says, he wanted to make the fire Indra slayer, but he made him one whose slayer was Indra. Indrasya hainam Shatrum achikirshat indrasya shatrum akarot. Now, Patanjali alludes to this wrong usage in connection with the second supplementary reasons given why grammar should be studied, to avoid the use of corrupt forms. Now, this then becomes a Lokika usage. That is, Shabdanushasana is that Sadhu Shabdaha and Apashabdaha Prithak Kritaha Sadhu Shabdaha Anushishyante. Correct speech forms are taught after separating them from incorrect speech forms. And in order to keep merit, we should not use incorrect forms. Dushtan shabdan ma prayukshmahi ityadhyayam vyakaranam. Now, the first major reason given, Raksha, for protecting the Veda. The second reason also involves ritual and shifts the topic for us slightly. This concerns uha, modification of a mantra. Patanjali remarks that mantras are not recited in the Veda with all genders and vibhaktis made explicit. A participant in a ritual has to make appropriate modifications in them when they are used to accompany ritual acts. One who does not know grammar is not capable of modifying mantras appropriately. A standard example given is a mantra. For example, in the Darsha Purnamasa, the Adharyu pours out grains into the Shurpa and he recites Devasya Tva Savituh Prasave Shrinor Bahubhyam Pushno Hastabhyam Agnaye Jushtam Nirvapami. I pour you as something that is pleasing to Agni. Now, a comparable mantra is supposed to be used in offering a porridge, charu, to Surya. And this requires the uha, or modification of the mantra, such that instead of saying Agnaye Jushtam Nirvapami, you say Suryaya Jushtam Nirvapami, with Suryaya instead of Agnaye. Now, Patanjali's statement that only a grammarian is capable of making this change calls for comment, obviously. It is very difficult to argue that he means that only a student of grammar could know that the form Surya corresponds to Agnaye. Any person who knew and spoke the language would know this without needing a grammar to inform him. On the other hand, Patanjali can be considered and must be considered to say that only one who knows grammar also knows how these items correspond to each other formally. That is, Agnaye is composed of the base Agni with the ending E, Nge, before which the ending E of the base undergoes a replacement. In Paninian terms, Agni goes to Agne E, Gher Ngiti. Agne E goes to Agnaye, Echo Yava, Yavaha. Similarly, Suryaya represents the result of Surya, followed by the ending E. Surya E goes to Surya, Surya Ya, with replacement of the ending by Ya, Nger Yaha. And then the final vowel of the base is replaced by a long vowel, Suryaya, Supicha. That is, we look at the Vedic forms formally now, in terms of their structure and how they are derived. And only a grammarian can do this and thereby appreciate how this uha takes place. This view is confirmed by what Patanjali says after naming and discussing all the compelling reasons for studying grammar. The question is posed, why is a group of reasons explained only to those who are embarked on studying grammar and not something else, such as a study of the Veda? The answer is that the matters nowadays are different from how they were at an earlier time. At an earlier time, the situation was such that Brahmanas would study grammar after going through the Upanayana ceremony. Then Vedic words would be taught to them once they had acquired in grammar a knowledge of the places of production, sthana, the articulators, karana, and the modes of articulation outside the vocal cavity, anupradana. Nowadays, that is in Patanjali's time, things are not that way. Once students have studied the Veda, they study the Veda first. They are in a rush to marry, and so forth. And they are wont to say that for them, Vedic words are established from the Veda, mundane words from common usage. Patanjali says, tadadyatve na tatha, vedamadhitya tvaritavaktaro bhavanti, vedanno vaidikaha shabdaha siddhaha lokacha laukikaha anarthakam vyakaranam. Grammar serves no purpose because the Vedic words are established for us from the Veda. Laukika words are established to us from loka, from common usage. Now, this has to say that there was a Laukika usage. That is, that the language that we call Sanskrit, Dandi called Sanskrit for the first time, and used what were called Shabda and was referred to as Bhasha, the spoken language, was indeed used as a Vyavahara instrument, a means of communication at the time of Patanjali and Katyayana. Now, in the same vein, after remarking how reciting correct speech forms, Pratipada Patha, is clearly no means of allowing one to know all possible correct speech forms, Anupaya, Patanjali states the theoretical foundation of Panini's grammar. One has to put into play a set of rules, lakshanam, that includes what is general and what is particular, samanya visheshavat, that is general rules and related exceptions. And this is next is important, whereby with a minimum of effort, students of the work could achieve an understanding, pratipadyeran, of great masses of correct speech forms. Patanjali says, Kinchit samanya visheshavan lakshanam pravartyam yenal pena yatnena mahato mahata shabdoghan pratipadyeran kimpunastat utsarga pavadau. Now, here again, to say that the students learn these things is not the proper approach, given that the loka already use the correct speech forms. They now learn the structure of these forms, how they are derived, the upatti of the forms. In connection with this, we have to consider that what Katyayana says, he says, Shastra Purvake Prayoge Abhyudaya Statulyam Veda Shabdena. There is Abhyudaya, merit or felicity, in the use, prayoga, of correct speech forms, Shastra Purvake Prayoge, in the use that is preceded by the Shastra, the grammar. And he mentions that this is comparable to what is done in the Veda. And Patanjali supplies an example for that. He says, Tattunyam Veda Shabdaha api evam amhivadanti. Yognishtomena yajeta ya uchainam evam Veda. It is not sufficient if you're going to get the rewards of a yajna. It is not sufficient that you perform the agnishtoma and such, but that you know why this is performed. That this is why the Brahmanas give the legends explaining the background of the rituals. It is not just Katyayana and Patanjali who assume a spoken language as a source of knowledge about the language itself and informing the grammar. We have to assume that Panini took the same attitude and had the same situation. We also have to consider that Panini compiled his Shabdanushasana as a work to be studied by native speakers of the language he described. Thus, there's a sutra, very famous one, that says, Prishodaradini yathopadishtam. This says that items like Prishodara are considered correct speech form, speech usage. And this sutra uses the term yathopadishtam, yatha upadishtam. This term cannot mean as taught in the grammar, since the items in question are precisely such that no rules of the Ashtadhyayi formulate operations that account for them. For example, no rule provides for deleting the ta of prishat before udara so that you get prisha udara and therefore can get prishodara. Therefore, we must accept what Paniniyas, such as the Kashikas, say concerning this. The Kashika says, Yeshu lopagama varna vikaraha shastrena na vihitaha drishyante cha tani yathopadishtani sadhuni bhavanti. Yani yathopadishtani shishtaihi ucharitani prayuktani tani tatheva anugantavyani. The items in question are to be accepted as you find them. Yathopadishtam, yathashishtaha, tani shabda rupani, ucharayanti prayunjate, tatheva tani svikartavyani. This is the thrust of it. This also accords with a series of rules where Panini says certain operations are seen, trishyante, that is, one can witness them. Elsewhere, he says anyasya, anyesham, anyatra. That is, Panini himself cannot specify where these apply because the developments that lead to these forms have not come to their end. How do we know where they apply? The commentators tell us, go see what the Shishtas say. The Shishtas are the ideal speakers. Now, this method that Panini adopts to describe the language also links him to his Vedic antecedents. This is again well known. As is well known, Panini derives final utterances starting with posited underlying utterances, alokika vakya, after which, in which affixes, pratyaya, are introduced after bases, prakriti, under conditions which include particular meanings, to give syntactic padas, supingantam padam. And then these padas are, from the beginning, linked to each other semantically and syntactically. Operations apply to these which lead ultimately to final utterances used in linguistic interchange. Laukikani vakyani. This has a parallel in Vedic, as everybody knows, where the Sanghita Patha is theoretically treated as a result of applying phonological rules, modifying posited underlying padas in the Padapatha. And the Rig Pratishakya says, Pada Prakriti is Sanghita. This has to be taken as a Pada Prakriti here has to be taken in the sense of which have the Sanghita is a Bahubri here. The Sanghita has the Pada as its Prakriti. The main contrast between this and Panini system is that the latter does not start from padas as given items. Instead, they are formed from bases and affixes. So if the Padapatha will give something like Agnim, Ire, Pura, Hitam, Panini will give Agni, Ida, I. That is, the pada is and further analyzed. Now let me end by considering briefly some relations among Vedangas. Recall that Patanjali speaks of an early time at which Vyakarana preceded Vedic instructions and that students subject to the latter knew places of production and so on from the former. This means, as Nagesha notes, that at one time Shiksha was included in Vyakarana, in the domain of Vyakarana in general. Thus, Patanjali thus couples Shiksha with Vyakarana. And indeed, Panini presupposes the phonetic knowledge imparted by Shiksha when he says, for example, Tulyasya prayatnan savaranam. He does not tell you what the sthanani are. He does not tell you what the abhyantara prayatnas are. He doesn't go into that. He assumes you know it. Yaska also acknowledges the relation of Nirukta to Vyakarana when he says, Tadidam Vibhyasthanam Vyakaranasya Kartsnyam Swartha Sadhakancha. The field of knowledge called Nirukta is a complement of Vyakarana. It completes it, Kartsnyam. And it also serves its own purpose. This purpose of its own is explaining meanings which do not accord with the grammatical structure of words used in a mantra, where the accent and grammatical formation of a pada, a swara, and sanskara are congruent, samartha, with the meanings and match the action denoted by the verb. One simply explains the word in the manner dictated by the structure and in accordance with Vyakarana. It says, Athanir vachanan tad yeshu shabdeshu swara sanskarau samarthau pradeshikena gunena anvitau syatan tathatani nirbruyat. For example, if the mantra in the Rig Veda contains the form trataram, protector, one simply lets that be explained as grammar does it. It is the base tra plus the suffix trich, since it is antodatta, And the meaning accords with that. Yahat trayate sa trata, because nultri chau are krit suffixes and kartari krit, they signify agent. Where these conditions are not meant, one still must supply an etymological explanation for the word in question. And Yaska goes into quite a detail on the different techniques to be used. I take the simplest one to start. For example, he says first, by the means of some meaning function, some meaning similarity. For example, pakva means cooked. As a regular formation, this involves taking the dhatu pach, letting it be followed by the ending ta, kta. Now this then undergoes certain operations. The cha goes to ka, chofkuhu. The ta goes to va, pachovaha. Moreover, kta regularly follows a verbal base if an action is referred to the past, nishtha. On the other hand, cooked, with past reference does not fit the meaning of pakvam. In the mantra, Rig Veda 689:7, speaking of Indra, amasu pakvam eiraya asuryam rohayo divi. Excuse me, I don't recite Veda with the proper swaras. I've never been trained in that. Now this has to mean, Indra, you put milk, pakvam, in cows, amasu. Now pakva here does not mean cooked. It means milk, according to every traditional interpretation, including Westerners also. Nevertheless, one explains the use here, pakva, by virtue of meaning affinity. As food referred to as pakva is consumed, bhujyate, so is milk that is found in cows. This is the semantic link and allows you to understand what is meant. Now, before he characterizes nirukta as a complement to grammar, Yaska also insists that without nirukta, there is no proper understanding of the meanings found in mantras, and that one who lacks this understanding cannot specify the proper accent and grammatical formations of words. The accent and the proper formation. He says, Athapi idamantarena mantreshu arthas pratyayo na vidyate. Arthama pratiyato natyantam swara sanskaro deshaha. That is, to describe the words of a mantra properly, one has to understand what they mean. And one can do this according to this, and one can reconcile this with the structure or resort to etymological explanation. Now, in Panini's system also, meaning serves as a condition, nimitta, for introducing grammatical units and performing operations on them. However, there's a difference between this procedure and what Yaska has in mind. For Yaska, the ultimate meaning of a word understood through the procedure of nirukta involving the association of actions with the meaning of nouns serves to interpret utterances. He is given the Veda. He is given the Veda, the Vedic text with mantras. These mantras contain certain difficult words to explain, nighantu. They are then given an etymological explanation. For Panini, meanings are conditions that serve to condition operations whereby utterances are derived. Nevertheless, the proper structural understanding of utterances and their constituents can and do serve a purpose with respect to the Veda as noted above. Thus we may view these and related Vedangas from two perspectives, performance and interpretation. Vyakarana deals with the structure of utterances treated from a speaker's point of view. It starts with the Bhaktur Vivaksha, what the speaker wishes to express. Shiksha deals with the pronunciation of the segments in such utterances that are derived. Chandas deals with the metrical organization of utterances, namely mantras, as used in ritual performance. All of these have to do with performance. Nirukta deals with an exegetical side. And from this point of view, Nirukta then not only links with Vyakarana, but very closely links with Purva Mimamsa, which again is an interpretive system. It is an exegesis of Vedic mantras to determine the proper Viniyoga in the ritual. And you can see this opposition in terms of metalinguistic principles. In grammar, you have certain decision principles. Purva para nityantaranga pavadanam uttarottaram baliyaha. In Mimamsa, it's the reverse. You have Shruti Linga Vakya Prakarana Sthana Samakhyanam Samavaye Para Daurbalyam Arthavi Prakarshat, and that gives you the clue. Why? Because the meaning intended, the understanding of the meaning is further removed as you go out. You have first the Shruti, the word itself, and the Vibhakti itself tells you the function of the word and tells you how to use that element. So you have this one. My main conclusions are: one, the Veda certainly was the text that was at the source of all of this. That very text, however, was recited by people who spoke Laukika Sanskrit, and that text was subject to modification and corruption, hence Raksha was needed, protection of the text. Two, there was a Laukika usage which was used in Vyavahara. You cannot deny that Sanskrit, that it was not simply, as some people have claimed even nowadays, that what Panini describes is somehow a Paninian Sanskrit. No, he is describing an object language which was used in actual communication. And thirdly, these systems that are devised can approach these materials from two major points of view. One, the performance view, and one, the interpretational view or exegesis. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor George Cardona. Wonderful paper. As usual, you have cracked so many stones, hitherto not broken, and so many microscopic elements which were undigested till was made it very clear. And it is a very, very excellent paper, research paper. And I congratulate you for finding time to prepare such an authentic paper, quoting several acharyas, and giving a very multi-dimensional what we call nature of the subject, and how you connect with all these things. That is very normally it is very difficult. So it is a very good paper and very enlightening paper. And I thank you for finding time to come over on the virtual platform and present this paper. I feel that after giving the lecture, you are becoming more young, very, seemingly very happy. So what you could deliver, that you have delivered. So thank you for your presentation. Now, Professor Peter Scharf has arrived, and he is in platform now. Peter Scharf, as I told you previously, when I welcomed, I have mentioned his name, but he was not there at that time. He is present now. He is a very dearest student of Professor George Cardona, and a great grammarian, a great linguist compared to linguistics and other things, and a man of doing great service to manuscriptology and digitalization of Sanskrit texts and like that in modern way. So he is a blend of tradition and modernity. Now I invite Professor Peter Scharf to deliver the keynote address on the subject, the keynote paper on the subject, reduplication and syllable structure in Paninian tradition.
So
Professor Peter Scharf.
yeah, let me ask you to let me share my screen. Can I do that?
Yeah, sure, you can do. You are a co-host, so you can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So reduplication and syllable structure in Paninian tradition.
Yes.
Today's 19th.
We'll look first at some reduplication basics, and then focus on the term ekach and what the commentators what some of the commentators have said about it, and then I'll evaluate what their statements have been and propose a conclusion. So reduplication takes place in the perfect, desiderative, intensive, class 3 present stems and the reduplicated aorist, each of which I've given an example here. From the root kur, chakara in the perfect, chakirshati in the desiderative, che kriyate in the intensive. Just a moment, I'm going to adapt my audio so you can hear me a little better.
Yeah. Yes.
You should be able to hear me a little better now. In the intensive, che kriyate and several other forms. In the class 3 present stems, dadati, for example, and the reduplicated aorist from kur again, achikarat. So the question is, what gets doubled? The first 3 sutras of the 6th adhyaya state ekacho dve pratamasya, doubling generally takes place of the first syllable, and the examples given in the Kashika are shown here, jajagara, papacha, iyaya, and ara. So the first is an example of a root with 2 syllables, jagar, the second of a single syllable with initial and final consonants, pach. The third and the fourth are of roots with a single vowel, e and The next sutra, Ajadya Dvitiyasya, states that for vowel initial roots, doubling applies to the second syllable. Now, of course, e and are also vowel initial roots, but they don't have a second syllable. So they are shown under the first sutra. Vowel initial roots are these desiderative forms. The root here is atisa. The original root is ut, and the desiderative of it adds the suffix sun with the initial augment e to give you atisa. So the second syllable is ti, consisting of the original root, final consonant ta, and the e augment of the sun suffix. The third rule states an exception to the second rule, na nandra sanyogadayaha. The sounds na, da, and ra, initial in a consonant cluster in the second syllable, are not reduplicated. The examples shown here are undidishiti, adidishiti, and archishishiti from the roots undisa, adisa, and archisa, originally in the desiderative before doubling. Now, some terms are used in the discussion of these reduplicate roots. Purvo abhyasaha, the first of the doubled syllables, is termed abhyasa, and the second, ubhe abhyastam, the unit consisting of the doubled pair of syllables, is termed abhyasta. The rules that provide the reduplication, in which the first three sutras are taken to recur, are the 8th through 11th. Niti dhator anabhyasasya for the perfect, sanyangoho for the desiderative and intensive, shlau for the reduplicated present stems, present roots, class 2 root, class 3 roots, and changi for the reduplicated aorist. The reduplication in the perfect is described by this sutra. Reduplication occurs of the first or second syllable, depending upon whether the root begins with a consonant or vowel respectively, of a root that does not have a reduplicate syllable, anabhyasasya, before the perfect terminations that replace lit. And in the desiderative sanyangoho, the same conditions apply, shown in gray here. And the additional condition is mentioned if the root ends in the desiderative root forming affix sun or the intensive root forming affix young. And here this is taken to be a genitive, not a locative dual, because the e augment is part of the affix sun and has to be included in the syllable that gets reduplicated. In class 3 roots, shlau provides the reduplication with the same conditions shown in gray before the 0 suffix shlu of class 3 roots, and changi before the reduplicated aorist affix chung. Now let's look at the term ekach. Akashika states that the compound is a bahuvrihi compound. Ekachaha iti bahuvrihi nideshaha ekoch yasya sa ayam ekach iti avayavena vigraha tatra samudayaha samasarthaha. A segment of sounds consisting of both consonants and vowels that contains a single vowel is a syllable, not just the vowel, not just one vowel. Now, the question is, which consonants are included? Does the syllable include the consonants that precede the single vowel, as shown in red in Pach, follow the single vowel, that is just the cha in Pach, or both, that is the entire syllable Pach with preceding and following consonants? And does the syllable include all of them? That is, if there's more than one initial in a conjunct consonant in the root, does it include both consonants? If more than one consonant follows, does it include both? Or just the immediately contiguous one, as shown in the last line here in red? Now, the commentators say that it includes all of the consonants that precede and all of the consonants that follow. So in Pach, Pa, Ach, and Pach are all ekachas. They all contain one syllable and are samudayas that include a consonant as well. But the commentators argue that Pach is reduplicated. So in this passage, he states, thus in Pach, with which vowel there is a whole ekach, with that same vowel, there are ekachas that are parts of that, namely ach and pa. Evam cha pachitiyatra yeneva cha samudaya ekach, teneva tadavayava ach shabdaha pashabdascha. Among these, tatra, the separate ekachas that are parts of that whole are not reduplicated. Pratagavayave avayave ekach nadviruchite. The separate ekachas that are parts of the whole are not reduplicated. Rather, the whole ekach is. Kintarhi samudaya ekacheva. Jinendra Buddhi, in his commentary here, specifies the precise segment that is to be reduplicated in each of the four perfect active third person singular examples given in the Kashika. Jajagara, jag in the root jagar, papacha, pach in the root pach, iyaya, e in the root e, and in the root to go in the form ara. Now, Jinendra Buddhi gives an argument in favor of his determination of the Kashika, that the initial and final consonants are included. Faults would occur if just one of the ekachas that are parts of the whole root constituted the syllable to be reduplicated. In the root pach, if just the second partial ekach, ach, were reduplicated, the perfect active third person singular papacha would not result because the initial pa would not get doubled. As he says, evamapi yada pacher achabdasya dvirvachanam syat tada papacha iti evamadi na siddhyet. No problem would occur in this root if the first partial ekach pa were reduplicated. He continues, if just the first partial ekach ni were reduplicated, the term abhyasta would refer just to the segment consisting of the doubled syllable ni, but would exclude the final ja of the root. This final ja would therefore intervene between the abhyasta and the third person plural verbal terminations of the present and imperfect, and in the present active participle affix. Due to this intervention, faults would arise in the derivation of these forms. So in the present of nij, 714 adabhyastat provides replacement of the ja of the present active third person plural termination g with ut after an abhyasta. The rule would not apply if the ja did not immediately follow the abhyasta. And so instead, the general rule, jontaha, would apply and replace the ja with unt instead of ut. The result would be erroneous nenijanti instead of the correct nenijati for the third person plural. In the imperfect, sijabhyasta vidibhyascha, and what recurs in this rule is jerjus, provides the replacement of the termination g with us after an abhyasta, again, immediately following the abhyasta. This rule would not apply because the J would intervene between the abhyasta and the G. So the result would be the erroneous anenijan, because itaschad would delete the final E and then replace the ja with unt by 713, and then sanyogantasya lopaha would delete the final T. There are many other rules that apply, of course, in the derivation as well, but these are the relevant ones. So we would fail to get the correct form, anenijuhu. And in the present active participle of nij, ugidacham sarvanamastane dhatoho provides the augment num after the vowel of the affix shatar, final in a present active participle stem before a sarvanamastana nominal termination, as well as elsewhere. That's relevant is this. Nabhyastat shatuhu negates this provision after an abhyasta. Again, it is assumed it has to be immediately following the abhyasta. The rule would not apply if the J intervened between the abhyasta and nini. The result would be the erroneous nenijan in the masculine nominative singular after the num augment by 7170 applied, and we delete the final T by sanyogantasya lopaha. So the correct nenijat without the penultimate N and with preservation of the T of shatar would not occur. And Jinendra Buddhi's argument is shown here in detail, which I won't read through for sake of time. And Jinendra Buddhi therefore concludes, Tasmad ayuktam avayavanam dvirvachanam ataha samudaya eva dvirvaktavyaha. Therefore, reduplication of the parts is inappropriate, hence just the whole should be reduplicated. Now, Jinendra Buddhi considers an objection. The second syllable, the objector says, would not include its leading consonants because they were included in the first syllable as its trailing consonants. That is, if a syllable includes all the preceding and following consonants, then the second syllable of the root can't include the consonants that followed the first syllable because they were already included in the first syllable. So they can't be included as the initial parts of the second syllable. Yadi tarhi pratamasya ekacha dvirvachanam anena badhyate vyanjanasyapi pratama dvirvachana sambandhinaha dvirvachanam badhyeta tad yathabhutasyaiva prasangas tathabhutasyaiva dvirvachana nivrittir bhavati kimbhutasya cha pratama dvirvachanasya prasangaha savyanjanasya tatra yatha pratamasya ekacho dvirvachanam na bhavati evam ekaj vyapadeshino vyanjanasyapi na syat. Jinendra Buddhi then answers the objection. The explicit negation of the reduplication of na, da, and ra in the second syllable by the third sutra of the sixth adhyaya indicates that the leading consonants should be included anyway, even though they're mentioned twice as belonging to the first syllable and the second syllable. Naisha dosha. Yadayam nandraha sanyoga iti pratishedam shasti tadnyapayati vyanjanasya dvirvachanan nivrittir na bhavati iti. Anyathahi nadaranam dvirvachana pratishedo anartakasyat prapti abhavat. If you included the syllables, the na, da, and ra, in the first syllable and not in the second syllable, then there would be no need to state this exception, because when the second syllable got doubled, the nandraha would not get doubled anyway. The syllable to be reduplicated, he concludes, therefore includes the initial sa of the desiderative root forming affix sun. So in the root, in the root attisa, before reduplication, the desiderative root attisa from the base root ut would include the sa, that is tis. And similarly in ashisa, shis, and in arisa, nis, as he said, atitishiti, ashishishiti iti, atir asheshcha sani iti krite, tishabdaha, shishabdascha dviruchite, ararishiti iti, artehe, san, id, guna, raparatveshu kriteshu, rishabdo dviruchite. So it includes the S of the sun affix. Now, in my opinion, such a solution fails to recognize the phonetic insight that Panini had in formulating 613. It indicates not that the second syllable includes all of the consonants that precede, and the first syllable includes all the consonants that follow necessarily. Of course, it has to in single syllable roots, because there's only one syllable. But it indicates rather that the coda of an initial phonetic syllable is not included in the second syllable of a disyllabic root. So the nandraha are the codas of the first syllable. And this is well known in phonetics. They have greater sonority than the following consonant which begins the next syllable. And so the next syllable starts with the da, and the first syllable ends with the na. And similarly with r, and with a double d or a double stop, the same applies. If we extend the phonetics further, then we would not include a single consonant, which is initial in a subsequent syllable, in the previous syllable as its trailing consonant either. It's well known that Sanskrit has a syllabic structure that includes preceding consonants. Therefore, we would exclude the sa of the desiderative root forming affix sun from the second syllable. The absence of the sa in the doubled sequence in the abhyasta implies its intervention between the abhyasta and following affixes. That is, we would eliminate immediacy, anantariya. The importance of this issue is discussed in detail by Sharon Bandor, who's present in this meeting, in a paper he has submitted in the forthcoming felicitation volume in honor of Professor Cardona. I won't go into detail into that matter, but I hope you will look forward to reading his paper, where it has important implications. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vidushaka. It is a wonderful paper. And
Are questions allowed?
yes, questions are allowed, but can we do it at the end?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
So
forward
there
to
are questions. There are questions. Yes, we have
question.
to ask that we can have a small discussion at the end.
Okay.
And now I invite Professor Hi, Oberlin. As I told you, we Kerala people, we call her Dr. Priya. I invite her. People may be thinking, why? What is the connection between Natya and she is going to talk on theater? What is the relation between Natya and Vyakarana? Put in one session. No, both are related to Vedas. One is Upaveda, other one is Vedanga. And it is more than Upaveda, it is the essence of all Vedas. Natya is, Bharadamuni says that, Jagraha Pathya Mrigveda, Samabhyo Geetamevacha, Yajurveda Abhinayan, Rasan Atharvanadapi. So, Natya is the essence of all the Vedas. So, that is the propriety of including this paper here. Dr. Heike Oberlin, she is a student of Kerala. She studied in Kerala Kalamandalam, where she studied ancient Indian theatre, that is Kutiyattam, which is the traditional theatre of Kerala. I invite her to present her paper. Professor Heike Oberlin.
Yeah, thank you. I will, first of all, I will share my screen. Oh, I fear I have to do it again because I have a video clip and I have to share the audio also. Sorry, I have to do it again. So you should be able to see now my PowerPoint presentation. Bahubanapeta Murali Madhavan. Saha Pravartakarum Suhritukalum Evarkum Ende Namaskaram. Thanks to the Kandalur Shala for organizing this wonderful conference and inviting me to present a paper on female performers in Kerala Sanskrit theatre, which will take about 20 to 25 minutes. So we make now a quite big transition from Panini Sanskrit grammar to Kerala Sanskrit theatre. Tomorrow, on Monday, there will be more presentations on Kutiyattam, on the Sanskrit theatre of Kerala. But since our semester is not yet over in Tubingen, I'm unfortunately only be available sporadically on weekdays. So I came somehow in the Paninian session, but which was very fascinating for me to listen because while studying Indology, of course, we had also courses on Panini, but it is not my main subject. A short introduction will lead us to the oldest sources about female performers called Nangai, today Nangyar in Kerala, the usage of the term Nangyaramakute, finally the development concerning female roles and performers in Kutiyattam in the past few decades, ending with a brief outlook. India is immensely rich in dance and theatre forms. Dance in India was traditionally more of a range of women, while theatre and drama seem to have been mainly main domains. The ensembles of theatre companies traditionally exclusively consist of men who also enact female roles. Here just 3 examples, Yakshagana, Kathakali, or Ramlila. Kutiyattam, India's sole surviving traditional Sanskrit theatre, is here an exception because women and men perform together on stage since centuries. Kutiyattam is indigenous to the southwest Indian state of Kerala and reflects this in many ways unique culture. Down to the 1950s, Kutiyattam was, at least for the last few centuries, exclusively performed in prosperous Brahmanized temples as a ritually important theatre of the elite, Nambudari Brahmins and nobles, in specially constructed theatre halls, the Kutambalams. In these temple theatres, only actors from the Chakyar community and actresses and drummers from the Nangyar Nambiyar caste were allowed to perform until a few decades ago. These communities belong to the group of the Ambalavasi, temple dwellers. They are high in status and small in number. In Kutiyattam, With the exception of the demoness Shurpanaka, Chakyas enact the male roles and Nangyars portray the female characters since centuries. Nowadays, performers come from all stratas of the society. What do we know about the past and development of Kutiyattam, especially the history of these actresses? Let us go on a journey through time together. Going through the following inscriptions, we should be aware that Nangai means young woman in general and may have been used for other women than today's Kutiyattam performing Nangyar. Raghava Warrior and Rajan Gurukul, for example, list in Kerala Charitram the terms Nangai, Nangayar, Nangachi, and Kutachi, mentioned in inscriptions to denote women performing on stage. What they performed, we don't really know how it looked like. Let me very briefly introduce the most important ones of these inscriptions. In the area of today's Kerala, the oldest known inscription mentioning a performing Nangyar is from Chokur, dated 898. It informs about the payment in form of paddy and land tenure of the Nangayar of Chittorai. The inscription does not mention for what kind of service the payment was given. Today, we still find place names like Nangaparamba or Nangachikunnu close by the Chokur temple. In the years 900 and 978, we get the proof of a performing Nangai in Nedumburam twice. A copper plate of Tiruvalla, 11th-12th century, mentions a Nangyar and a Nambiyar from Ilankun Ranade together with the term Kutachi. From the 11th century, we learn about handing over of rice to Nangai Mar at the Shiva temple near Cochin. An inscription of the Vyangyapurishvara temple at Tiruvengaswal mentions the payment of Erunada Nangai for performing Shantikuta. Today, there exists a Nangyar family called Erdanada. In the 1990s, the sisters Tangam and Sarojini were both still performing Nangyarkuta in temples. It is possible that this family is identical with the Erunada family mentioned in the inscription. Only around 1100, we read for the first time about a Nangai and a Shakai performing together. A stone inscription at the temple of Nallur contains the information of a joint Kutu performance of a Chakai and the daughter of Tiruvemba Nangai. Thus, according to the inscriptions known to us, Nangai seem to have performed independent of Chakai, Chakyas, some kind of Kutu in Kerala up to the 11th century. Always keeping in mind that these Nangai are not obligatory identical with the modern Kutiyattam performing Nangyar. What about the Chakyar? The earliest mentioning of a Chakai Shakai on stage is found in Shilapatikaram. Kuta Chakyar from Parayur performed a Kuta. We find many epigraphical evidences of performing Chakai in the area of modern Tamil Nadu up to the 11th century. I just click through them as we concentrate here on the female performers. So we have here 848, a Arya Kutu performance by Shakai, then 1041, another Shakai Kuta, a Tamila Kuta. Here we have another Chakai or Shakai Kuta. While going through these inscriptions, I observed that Shakai, Jakai start to be mentioned only in the 11th, 12th century in inscriptions originating from the area of modern Kerala, the same time when the recordings stop in Tamil Nadu. In the year 1172, a copper plate tells us about a Chakai Kutu performance carried out by Shakai Mar in the Thiruvananthapuram district. Thus, it seems that performing Chakyas, Shakai, have come over from today's Tamil Nadu to the area of modern Kerala only during the 11th century. Up to then, in Kerala existed some kind of ritual performing art or arts carried out by Nangai. It is possible that these performance traditions joined during the 11th, 12th century in Kerala and started to form what we call today Kutiyattam, performing together. This assumption can be underlined by two orally transmitted legends. The Kutiyattam performing families tell about a reform of utmost importance of the then existing theatre by King Kulashekara Varman, who either lived in the 9th, 10th century or in the 11th, 12th century. We can't clearly date him. But it's exactly the time when the theatre traditions seem to have converged and, of course, seem to have undergone a reform more than necessary under such new circumstances. The second legend tells us about the first Chakyar actor who once came as part of the retinue of a Perumal king from Tamil Nadu to Kerala. Hence, we could understand the acting together quite literally as the melting together of formerly independent stage traditions by the Nangai or Nangyar Nambiar and by the Chakyar, Chakai. In any case, we can trace back the roots of performing Nangyar as part of what we call today Kutiyattam to the 11th, 12th century, and even performing obviously some kind of Kuti on their own to the 9th century. We do not have time today for a closer look on the development of the performative structure of Kutiyattam. It is full of features that clearly have a Kerala background. Just one example of a possible connection to the Vedic traditions of Kerala, and this is the main topic of this conference. The Utteria, a cloth coiled to a thick rope wrapped and worn above the left shoulder, is used, for example, in the last night of an Angulyankam performance as an important token to identify Sita. Here we can see this red Utteriam, as well as by the Nambiar, when he performs the so-called Nambiyar Tamil on the last night of Angulyankam. On the right is the traditional costume of the Nangyaramas, including an old coiled Utteriam. This term Utteria is also used for the robe employed in the same way during the Agnichayana by the Yajamana, the sacrificer, and by his wife, the Patni. You can see it here. There are more possible links, like the representation of certain characters. Here the Yajamana on the left and Vasantaka and Kutiyattam on the right, or the use of the very complex hand gestures in both traditions. They are differently, of course, in use, but still that Kerala developed such an exact hand gesture language in Kutiyattam, including signs for grammatical case endings and so on. Another example is the very strange way to render text in Kutiyattam, which resembles the Vedic recitation of the Nambudiri Brahmins. And there are more examples. There is a paper tomorrow actually on that. I try to come and listen to it. I'm very curious about that. Who has possibly influenced whom in which way is, as usual, very difficult to find out nowadays. Coming back to the female performers in Kutiyattam. What is Nangyaramakute or Nangyaramakute? In the 20th century, Nangyaramakute is used to define the flashback, Nirvahanam, of the Chedi, a maidservant and confidant of the heroine, in the beginning of the second act of King Kulashekara Varman's play Subhadra Dhananjayam. Nangyar is the community to which, until a few decades ago, all actresses of Kerala Sanskrit theatre Kutiyattam belonged to. Kutiyattam stands in this context for an elaborate solo sequence. Flashbacks or retrospective views of single characters, male and female, are a common technique used in the Kutiyattam complex. Here the character becomes a storyteller, performing often for many consecutive days as single actor or actress on stage. Such a flashback follows a fixed structure. Due to time restraints, I won't go into detail now. Also here, actually, I found out together with a colleague a possible resemblance to the Praishata in Veda. In Nangyaramakute, the character of the Chedi inserts in all detail the story of God Krishna. The actress performs more than 200 Nirvahanam shlokas and their interpretation. For several days, she has to portray on her own all the demons, gods, humans, and animals appearing in Krishna's story. This flashback was introduced most probably in the 16th, 17th century as part of the Krishna Bhakti movement in Kerala. According to its content, it is also called Shri Krishna Charitam. We have no earlier proof of such an elaborate flashback or enactment of the stories of Shri Krishna in Kutiyattam. Neither the Kutiyattam patronizing King Kulashekara, the author of the drama Subhadradhananjan, nor Nangyaramakute, a detailed commentary on the same, or Nadangusha, the hook of the actor, a detailed critique of Kutiyattam from probably the 15th century, mentions Krishna Charitam or Nangyaramakute, or even a flashback of the character of the Chedi. The first publication of the stage manual was done in 1984 by P.K. Narayana Nambiar, wherein he edited together several palm leaf manuscripts. Since then, several further editions as well as studies have appeared. Due to the support by Diane Doherty, a full consecutive performance of all verses was done between 1989 and 1995 in the Vadakunathan temple at Thrissur by Usha Nangyar and her pupil Aparna Nangyar. The latter keeps this performance alive today. In 1999, with Margi Sati's newly written Sri Ramacharitam Nangyaramakute, the understanding of what Nangyaramakute is has become wider. Until then, it was limited to Sri Krishna Charitam. Here, the story of Sri Rama is inserted and narrated by Sita as her Nirvahanam in the third act of Bhava Bhuti's Uttara Rama Charitam. Nowadays, nearly any flashback sequence of a female character taken from an old stage manual or composed recently are called Nangyaramakute. Here just two examples, Draupadi from 2014 or Gita Govindam from 2019. In the 20th century, temples once rich, hosting Kutambalam theater halls and conducting performances on an annual basis, lost their holdings in the wake of radical land and social reforms. In order to survive, Kutiyattam had to quit this environment and present itself on secular stages. Performance working merely as a ritual could still be observed in the 1990s when I was studying myself at Kalamandalam. I give you a short video example taken by me of Erdanada Sarojini Nangyar in 1996. She was trained to conduct a ritual on stage, thus coming from the right family, doing the right movements and recitations in the right order to the right time at the right place. Facial expressions, invoking or showing sentiments are not important for serving this purpose. Her costume and makeup used are already more or less history. Her quick movements and jumping without lifting the legs too high because of the old costume with a front open skirt as well. Just go a little bit forward. So it was taken in Angadipuram in the temple of Angadipuram, and just because of the time, I go a little bit forward. Yeah. So her movements are quick. She's not making use of her face or eyes at all. She was never trained to do so. One mirave, no edakya. Trem kiti, takukukum, trem. So it's the same movements like we know today, but small and quickly done, showing that the character is going from one place to another, female character. Now she's reciting. Just a second, I'll complete it. So she's translating while reciting word by word of the Sanskrit verse. It's a fourth shloka of Sri Krishna Charitam. She's translating it into ancestral language, which also has signs for grammatical endings, like you have it in the Dravidian language, Malayalam. So these signs are added, agglutinated. And she's reciting herself. Usually this is done by the Nangyar sitting at the stage side playing the cymbals. But as this Nangyar, she is from the right family, but she is not trained to perform Kutiyattam or Nangyaramakute. She does not know to recite the shloka. So she's doing it herself. It has to be recited by a Nangyar. Then this is still okay in this ritualistic setup. And also I go again, whoops, I want to go a little bit forward to the end. So the performance at that day, some of you have seen maybe Kutiyattam performances, they can last a whole night. Usually they last 2, 3, 4 hours or even 7 to 8 hours. Her performance lasted 15 minutes. So she just did what had to be done. And there was one old lady, there was myself and one old lady in the audience. And I'll just also show you how unspectacular the end is, how she's leaving the stage then. So, and yes, this was the audience. We have literally proofs like Nartangusha that Kutiyattam was not all the time performed in such a purely ritualistic way, but due to the changes in society, it was clearly in danger to get lost when staying in the closed setup of the temples in the mid of the 20th century. Sarojini Nangyar had been awarded the Central Sangeet Natak Academy Award recently for her great services in keeping alive the Nangyaramakute tradition. It was Painkulam Ramachakya who dared to take the step outside of the temple premises in the beginning of the 1950s. A big step indeed. To make a long story short, in 1965, he became the head of the newly introduced Department of Kutiyattam at the Dance and Theatre Academy, Kalamandalam. What again scandalized the traditionalists was his decision to accept students from other families than Chakyar and Nambiar Nangyar. We keep concentrating on the female performers. So in 1971, my teacher, P.N. Girija, a young Musad, joined for learning the female parts. So she was the first non-Nangyar. It was in 1974 that with Shailaja, a Nayar girl, a student lower in status than Chakya, Nangyar, and Nambiar, joined. Nowadays, pupils from other castes, even foreigners like me or Tomoe Irino from Japan, are introduced into the theatrical art. In 1995, I did, as the first foreigner and trained by P.N. Girija, my stage debut at Kalamandalam. Tomoe's was just a few months later in Nangyaramakute. Since then, quite a few have followed. In 1970s, 80s, the makeup and costume were modernized with the help of Govinda Warrior. So we can see here the old costume and makeup and how it slowly came to what we know today as the Strivesham, typical Strivesham appearance in Kutiyattam. It was also Kalamandalam Girija who performed in 1984 for the first time Nangyaramakute on a secular stage, being from another community than a Nangyar and wearing the reformed costume and makeup. The newest trends open even male roles to actresses. In 1995, Kalamandalam Sophie portrayed as the first woman a male role on stage, Lakshmana. In 1998, P.N. Girija performed Sri Rama in Mumbai. When it comes to a perspective of female characters and female performers on the Kutiyattam stage, we have seen a great expansion in the last half century in the range of the women performing and the plays being presented. Obviously, more girls and women are trained nowadays, and they are creating, besides the rather short traditional women's roles and the Sri Krishna Charitam Nangyaramakute, a larger repertoire and thus more and more opportunities on stage for themselves. Let me end with a brief outlook. Traditionally, not all characters appear on the Kutiyattam stage. One of them is Sita. Here you have to imagine her sitting on Rama's lap. He's holding her in his arm. Nowadays, Sita is appearing in most performances, portrayed by a female actress. New plays are open up scope for new female characters and their actresses. Also with the costume is experimented. Here just 3 examples of many. At the same time, old, nearly forgotten, highly ritualized traditions like Dashamamkute are kept alive. Here we can even see a revival of old makeup and costume patterns. Sveta Nangyar did her stage debut in 2016 wearing a modern wooden crown but the old red makeup. Here with her grandparents, her grandfather is P.K. Narayana Nambiar. Today, a constantly growing number of female performers from diverse backgrounds try out different paths on the Kutiyattam stage, adding new plays and characters, writing new Nirvahanam flashbacks, performing on secular stages worldwide, as well as in the temple. At the same time, some revive temple duties and experiment with old makeup and costume patterns. All these actresses are very much part of an extremely lively theater tradition, testing its boundaries, trying out different directions at the same time. In doing so, they contribute to the continuation and further development of the whole Kutiyattam complex. As they are in constant discussions about what works and what doesn't, we can be curious of what is going to come in the next few years. Thank you. Namaskaram.
Thank you, Dr. Heike Oberlin. It is a wonderful presentation. We could see we feel that we are sitting in the temple and Vadakanatha temple and seeing the Kudiyattam. Such an atmosphere has been created by you through your videos. You have given a complete picture of Kudiyattam. It's slightly touched its history and also explained the social and religious aspects of Kudiyattam and the way of performing and its relation with the Vedic rituals and other religious rituals. It is a wonderful performance. If it was your session was tomorrow, it would have more better because we have great Kudiyattam connoisseurs will be there tomorrow.
Yeah, I've seen it in the
like
performance. I have seen it in the program. I'm sorry, but yes, tomorrow is so full than my day.
Okay. Anyway, if time permits, you can join tomorrow and see and have your opinion and other discussion. Also, you can participate. Anyway, she has presented the female performers in Kudiyattam, a historical overview. And why there is a saying in Sanskrit that Madhurena Samapayet. Any program, it should end in sweetness. So this is theater aesthetics is being presented here by a great performer of Kudiyattam from Germany, our Heike Oberlin, and it is a wonderful program. And now we will go for a slight discussion of a small discussion of all papers. If we cannot entertain all the questions because time is too late. We were compelled, the organizers were compelled to start the program at 5:30 because of the American timing. So now time is too late and we can permit some 20 minutes for discussion. So the relevant questions we have now, Professor George Cardona has raised some questions, perhaps in the paper of his own student, Professor Peter Scharf. So now, if Professor Cardona is available in the platform,
Yes.
you can very well ask the question.
Okay, Peter, you said something about the coda of a syllable. That is in connection with the sutra that says na nandraha sanyogadayaha. You said that the na of undidishati is the coda of the syllable.
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
But that's not what Panini says.
What does Panini say?
That is the normal the syllabification of a sanyoga as formulated in Pratishakya normally is that the sanyogadi consonant, the initial consonant of a cluster, goes with a preceding vowel. That would mean that na is the aksharanta, is the syllable final, is the coda of the first syllable. But Panini Sutra says na ndraha sanyogadayaha. That is the na is the sanyogadi.
Well, what it says is na nandraha sanyogadaya.
It's not supposed to, that's right. That is, it should not be subject to ekacho dve prathamasya eka ajader dvitiyasya.
Yeah.
So then it should be that dvitiyasya ekachaha, then the na should belong to the second, according to that formulation.
Well, what it says is what I understand very well what you're saying. But the Nandra Sanyogadaya is talking about a sanyoga. Okay,
Right.
it's the nadra ra are the beginnings of a conjunct consonant,
Right.
which is true. Of course they are.
Let's go with the preceding or the following akshara.
Well, the conjunct consonant is what it is. The syllabic structure is something else.
No. Just You have ndra, you have na. Undidishati. Undi, und is the dhatu, and then you have isa, and you get undisha. Undisa. Fine. Now the issue is here, should undi be subject to reduplicate, to doubling?
Right.
That would be by ajader dvitiyasya.
Yeah.
So that would be the dvitiya, that would be the second.
That's right.
Second syllable. But it would not be the second syllable in the syllabification if the na is the end of, is the coda of the first syllable.
Right.
So how do we reconcile that?
Well, the sanyoga is a consonant cluster. The ekach is something else, right? The ekach is the syllable.
Fine.
So rather than, so nandraha is necessary to clear up some confusion, but it doesn't necessarily imply what the commentators take the jnapaka to be. So what Panini wants to communicate is that the nadara do not reduplicate with the following syllable, right? They do not reduplicate with a syllabic structure that consists of na, da, or sorry, na plus in undidishiti of na, da, e.
Right.
Just the D reduplicates.
Right.
So in my opinion, what Panini is saying is that the conjunct consonant initial does not belong to the following syllable. It belongs to the preceding syllable.
That is fine, but that goes according to the utsarga that in the sanyoga, the sanyogadi goes with the preceding vowel. That's normal. But this is an exception to the preceding rule that says ajader dvitiyasya.
Yeah.
Now, if it is ajadi und, then the dvitiya the dvitiya ekach is undi according to Panini. You want it to be that according to him it is di.
It doesn't say that the next syllable begins with the conjunct consonant. What it says is that it does not. But the commentators are assuming that because it says the end does not belong to the following syllable, that by default it always would.
No, I'm not saying that. No.
Well, that's what it seems like. It seems like if what they're saying is the statement is necessary because without that statement, the nadara would belong to the following syllable. Okay, right?
Okay, let's put it formulaically. Let's put it in Sanskrit. Unditi dhatuhu. Undisa ityatra dvyaksharam asti. Prathamam aksharam kinswarupam, dvitiyam aksharam cha kinswarupam. Dvitiyam aksharam dvitiyaksharasya kim indi iti swarupam, ti iti va swarupam. That's the question. Is the second akshara consist of di or indi?
Right.
Now, according to Panini, it does consist of indi, because he has to negate what would happen by the previous sutra.
I think according to Panini, he negates that it belongs to the second syllable by the third sutra.
And that's an interpretation that is okay. It's just your interpretation.
So the jnapaka, I think they're interpreting the jnapaka in a very naive way to say that
It's not a jnapaka.
Well, that's what they say. Jnapayati. Jnapayati iti acharya.
Okay.
So
The true jnapaka, if you have siddhe sati, uchyate. If something is already accomplished, that you have to say something that serves to make known a different principle. But that doesn't matter to the question. The question is, if this is an exception, if nandraha sanyogadayaha is an exception, is an apavada to the previous sutra, ajader dvitiyasya, then obviously na can be the initial of an ekacha, that is dvitiya. Simple as that. Now you're saying that Panini negates that in saying this. Okay, that's your interpretation, but
Well,
nobody else accepts it.
Well, the commentators, that's my point, is the commentators all accept that the nadara belong to the following syllable, and that what Panini states by negating that just negates what gets reduplicated. But that's why the reduplication comes out okay, even though they want to assert that all of the consonants, both preceding and following a vowel, belong to the syllable. So what they want to assert is that the sa of adisa, or atisa, or archisha, that the sa of that desiderative root before reduplication belongs to the syllable that gets reduplicated. So you get the abhyasta then consists of a segment that begins with a. It consists of atisa. I'm sorry, atis. It ends in s, in sa. And so this allows the commentators to engage in a very long and complicated discussion of why shap does or does not intervene between the desiderative root and g for the application of junta and so on.
Final point. Have you looked at what Kobayashi says on all of this?
No, I haven't.
He has a long discussion in his dissertation that was published.
Okay.
Structure and this sort of thing.
Yeah, I'll take a look.
He knows more about modern phonology than I'll ever know. So, codas and onsets and all of this.
Okay, thank you for that reference.
Thank you, Dr. Murali sir. Can you ask a question?
Excuse me?
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yes, yeah, go ahead. So
Thank
me
you.
or Professor Cardona,
Thank you.
to whom do you
Thank
want
you.
to address the question?
Thank you. My question is to Dr. Cardona. Sir, there is a saying that Laukikanam ki sadhunam artham vagnu anuvartade rishinam punarabhyanam vadamartho anudhavati, which shows that in every age we should ponder over to protect and know the correct objective meaning meant by the rishis. And unlike Yaska, limited exposition only done by unlike Yaska, limited exposition only given by Panini in the Sutram, Prusho Daradini Yathopadishtam in 6.1.10 and Unadayo Bahulam in 3.3.1.
Yes.
My question is, sir, what the Yaska's interpretations are considered as yoga rootam. My question is, what is this meant by this yoga rootam? Is it include Veda only, or is it include non-Vedic usage? that is a doubt. Then my about the Peter Sports, I congratulate sir. You offered your guru a Guru Darshana, your Sri your Cardona, by your papers substantiating his teachings and generally which indicate that the decay of original usage from the Vedic times to the later times. Sir Peter, sir, you contributed to society what is expected from a grammarian for the protection of culture and language, especially Sanskrit, by offering is your stand support to Panini Muni, the greater Sutragara, though some objection raised by your Guru. Thank you. Thank you.
To answer your question, the classification of words semantically as yogika, that is, this is something like karta, pachaka. There is yoga, that is an obvious connection of the dhatu and the pratyaya, and it's an analytic meaning, we would say. Pachaka is yaha pachati sa pachakaha. Fine. Rudha is something that does not allow that analysis. That is simply conventional. So panka is simply, there's no way of saying that mud is. Now, yoga rudha is pankaja. If it means padma, then it is rudha. But if it is pankajam padmam, then it is yogika. So, but this is not a distinction of Veda and of Vedika and Yogika and Laukika usage. This applies. This is found in. I mean, it's not even Panini doesn't deal with it, but every text on Alankara deals with it. Every text on Nyaya, everybody deals with it, and it comes in later when, for example, Nagesha is the latest one who does this and deals with this in great detail in the Manjusha. But before him also, it was not just grammarians, but poeticians and everybody who deals with language, deals with these classifications of words. Has nothing to do with Vedic versus Vedika versus Laukika usage, I don't think. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
There were a few questions towards my presentation in the chat I saw. One I have answered. Meanwhile, it was concerning the possible links between KUTIYATTAM and Veda. I have posted an article of mine together with a colleague. You can download it, and tomorrow there is a presentation especially on KUTIYATTAM and Veda, and I'm very curious about that. I tried to come. I hope it's possible because of my schedule tomorrow. And there's also the question if in KUTIYATTAM the performers are reciting shlokas. Yes, they do. So all verses, all prose in the drama, from the drama itself, from the play itself, all this text is recited in a very specific way. There are called swara. 21 or 24 are there of them ways to recite the text, and the text is rendered directly by the actor or the actress, not by any singer in the background like you have it in Kathakali or so. This is very specific in KUTIYATTAM. Additional text, like in the flashbacks, in the Nirvahanams, there are additional shlokas, or there are beneficial shlokas at the beginning, or there are other kind of insertions. They can be recited also by the cymbal players, or even some, in very specific situations, the drummer, the Nambiar, has also some text, but this is very rare on stage. Any other questions which I did not see now, because there are quite many in the chat? Yeah, there was posed the problem that many of the persons who may be in the audience today may not be proficient in Sanskrit language. Yes, that's a old problem actually, and also, we don't know how it came that in Kutiyattam, the Hanchester language became a real sign language, a sign language which follows actually the Malayalam language. And you have long explanations of what happens between the characters who talk Sanskrit or Prakrit, following a Malayalam commentary, a Malayalam interpretation, which nobody speaks, but you show it through the hand gestures. And so the Malayalam text runs in the head of the performers. It doesn't really help for the audience if you are not trained in this hand gesture language. But there is a character who is very important, the Vidushaka, the jester. Once he is on stage, he is translating, he is interpreting, he is commenting what the Sanskrit and Prakrit speaking characters say and what is happening. But he is not always there. So it's still a problem nowadays how to communicate actually to an audience who is not able to follow neither the Sanskrit text nor the hand gesture language.
Okay, this is a very good answer, very neatly explained. Yes. Any other question in the box? So, may I ask, Professor Vishnu has joined or not? Professor Vishnu has sent a message that due to climatic problems, he could not get connection. There is heavy rain is going on there and power failure. And even there is no chance of charging the computer. So that is a difficulty for him. Perhaps that may be the reason. So he may turn up tomorrow if time permits and the climate is agreeable. Now we will move on to next program of citations.
Yeah. Now it is a time for presentation of citations to the distinguished guests. Now I invite Professor Murli Madhavan, our special officer, the chief architect of our institution, to present the citation to Professor George Cardona.
Actually, I am not reading completely the citation that is already going to be sent to the respective scholars. Professor George Cardona, we are presenting Professor Cardona. He is known as Abhinava Panini. Professor George Cardona is known as Abhinava Panini. He was born in 1936 and had his early education. After that, he joined in Yale University for his PG. Make it in a very brief way. And his thesis was Indo-European thematic iris. And after his PhD, he worked in several universities as professor, assistant professor, and like that. And his long duration of service as a professor was in Pennsylvania University. Still, he used to, as honorary professor or emeritus professor, he used to serve the department and teach students. He is honored with several what we call biridams. Mahamahopadhyaya birida was conferred on him by Lal Bahadur Shastri, Central Sanskrit University in 2006. And honorary D.Litt was conferred on him by Ravindra Bharati University in 2008, and Vidya Vajaspati by Rashtriya Samskrit Samsthan, the Central University of Sanskrit, Delhi, in 2012. And the final, he won several awards. It requires pages to write to all the names. So I am not going to to that Sahasa. But I want to say that Kerala has honored him. The last honor has come from Kerala. That is by Kunjuniraja Academy of Indological Research. That is Rajaprabha Puraskar, in the name of Kunjuniraja. And Kunjuniraja was a close friend of him. And he was appointed as worked as erudite professor in erudite scheme, scholar in residence program in Shankaracharya University in my department. And he worked a long time there, not 1 week or 2 weeks. It is roughly 1.5 months he stayed there and took classes for researchers, not only for Sanskrit, even for Hindi and humanities. Students are benefited by his scholarly presentations. And his erudite program was on 2010. And he worked as visiting professor in not only in India, in several foreign countries. And his awards and fellowship are what we call innumerable. And it starts from 1956. Perhaps many of you were not born at that time. So 1956, he started. And his areas are comparative linguistics, Paninian grammar, and such things. And he has authored hundreds of research papers and several books. And as I told in the beginning, still he is writing very serious dissertations and publishing it. Some are under preparation, some are under script, and some are in the process of printing. And he has guided for 18 doctorates and several introductions and forwards, very scholarly introductions to several books, including one book which I have told you that published by me, Prakriya Sarvasva Vivrti. He gave a scholarly introduction, and we are very happy and proud. The Kandalu Shala wishes to present this citation in honor of Professor George Cardona, and we hope his scholarly guidance will continue for the growth of this infant university. With the Namaskarams, I present this citation to Professor George Cardona. Thank you.
Citation to Professor Peter Scharf.
Reading the citation, it will take so many time because it's pages there. So I skip that. I give a gist of it, and you show CL. Who is Peter? Okay. First of all, I want to say that Professor Peter Scharf is a eminent student of Professor George Cardona. The name and fame of the teacher is being spread by his dearest student, Professor Peter. Professor Peter is a visiting professor in IIIT in Hyderabad, teaching and guiding research in Indian linguistics and digital humanities. He was a visiting professor in IIT Mumbai and also an invited fellow at IIAS in Shimla. And Peter took his doctoral degree from Pennsylvania University and taught Sanskrit at Brown University for 19 years. He instituted a digital library of his own. Perhaps that may be the first for Sanskrit. Perhaps that may be and he is a visiting professor in several, still is a visiting professor in several universities, both in India and also in several foreign countries. His contribution to grammar, linguistics, and areas of manuscriptology are immense in nature, and especially for manuscripts, his studies, his contributions are really commendable. Peter Scharf, he has been invited to Shankaracharya University when I was there. He came there. He had worked in several other universities and delivered several lectures in Kerala, also in Kerala universities. He worked for 15 years in developing innovative research and instrumental technology for Sanskrit, and has proven to be eminently successful. He has obtained more than $1 million for integrating Sanskrit manuscripts and Sanskrit linguistic software. He digitalized Sanskrit libraries in Brown University, in Pennsylvania University, and also in Harvard University in United States. We are very proud that Professor Peter, a young scholar, actually today what we have experienced is a new experience we had, that presenting a paper can be transformed to a Vakyarthasadis, and that too in English. Vakyarthasadis normally is possible only in Sanskrit, but here two scholars from America, they proved that they can even Shastra subjects in Sanskrit, which have which needs to understand need deep erudition. Even such subjects they can be discussed in English, and it's a kind of Vakyarthasadis happened at the last phase of the discussion. So, with these observations, I, with all our love and respect to Professor Peter Scharf, the Kandru Shala is presenting this citation dated 18th of July 2021. Thank you. Dr. C.L. Prabhakar is an erudite Sanskrit scholar in not only in Sanskrit, classical Sanskrit, in Vedic literature also, both in traditional and modern sense. He was conferred with a doctoral degree in Krishna Yajurveda from University of Pune. He undergone his PG earlier in Harvard University in Karnataka. For more than 30 years, he was a professor, and he was for a long time, he was a visiting professor in Orlando. And he is the founder, that is the very, very significant contribution of Professor Prabhakar, that he founded a great institution, Nada, Veda Nada, the Adhyayana Kendra, that Nada Veda Adhyayana Kendra in 1994 at Bangalore. And it is a global institute now, because he is having members from around the globe. And his contribution to Vedic studies is immense. He has contributed, he has authored several books, especially in the Sanskrit field, Vedic field, and hundreds of research papers. Today, we have experienced his scholarship, how simply he has presented, very humble and simple presentation he has given. His contributions, and he has one significant part of his contribution in the academic field is that he is one of the main persons who spread Vedic culture and Hindu culture in America. And his contributions to the field of astronomy, astrology, yoga, and philosophy, and even to music, is remarkable. With great respect and the what we call the humble way, I present this citation to Professor Prabhakar, who chaired the session today and gave a very authentic scholarly speech on knowledge system. With this, I submit this citation to respected Professor C.L. Prabhakar.
Now, finally, I once again request Professor Murli Madhavan to present the citation to Professor Heike Oberlin.
Yes. Dr. Heike Oberlin, ratherly we Kerala people, we like to call, as I earlier told, Dr. Priya. Priya means the most beloved. Is the head of the Department of Indology at Tubingen University. Her thrust areas of her study are Indology and social and cultural anthropology. She is a student of Kerala. She studied more than 6 years from 1995 to 2001. I think so. I correct, I think so. Studied in Kerala Kalamandalam, the Kutiyattam in traditional way. And she used to perform professionally along with our very skilled professional artists of Kutiyattam in Kerala. Along with them, she performed several. I remember now that we were together in British Columbia University when World Conference was organized there. We were together in the same what we call session on Kutiyattam. And she presented, she was the master of that ceremony, and she managed the entire show and discussed in all the papers presented there. And she used to perform in not only in Kerala, in other places also. Many characters from Kutiyattam and Nangyaramakute also. That is a separate theater exclusively for women. And the most interesting information about her is that her relation with Kerala theater is that she studied more than 6 years, as I told you, the Kutiyattam, and her professional capacity has been proved in Kerala itself. And she studied under the famous Kutiyattam teacher Kalamandalam Girija and also Kalamandalam Ramachakya. And her contributions to the field of Indology, to the field of theater studies, and also the cultural studies of Kerala. That is very big in size. A great chunk of literature she has been composed in such areas. She is an expert in several languages. That is another important thing. She speaks Malayalam fluently. Today she started in Malayalam and Manipravalam, Prakrit, Sanskrit, English. Since Kutiyattam theater is a multilingual theater, you should know a Kutiyattam student should study several languages. In Kutiyattam theater, even though it is called a Sanskrit theater, it is a multilingual theater. There is, the Vidushaka talks in Malayalam, in Tamil, Nambyar Tamil, and even there is even still unidentified language, a tribal language is being used sometime by some characters like Shurpanakha. And her main contribution is that is one another aspect of her. She was mainly instrumental for establishing the Gundat chair for Malayalam at Tubingen University, and that too with the help of Malayalam Sarvakalashala in Kerala. And she won several awards and prizes, and the main award she received in 2019, that is Indian Council for Cultural Relations, and that is for Indo-German relations. with her, I think time is not sufficient to present all these things because time is too short. So I should show the propriety. I should seek propriety. So with this small submission, I beg to remain. I with all love and respect, and we will be again inviting her to our Kandalur Shala for more discussions on theatre, Natya and other things. With all respect, I submit this citation to Dr. Heike Oberlin. Thank you. Now I request Dr. G. Ramamurthy, the Director of the Academic Affairs of Kandalur Shala, to propose vote of thanks.
Good evening. So we are all at the end of the session, and it is the time for say goodbye to one and all after having a intellectual and scholarly feast served by a panel of scholars. And each and every item served in this sessions are very appreciable. And this session was chaired by C.L. Prabhakar, Professor of Vedas, Hindu University of America, Orlando. He highlighted the importance of prayer, perceptor, and mundane and meta knowledge on the background, a very broad background of the Upanishad knowledge systems. So I express my thanks to C.L. Prabhakar on behalf of Kandalur Shala. Thank you, sir. Then George Cardona, professor and Pennsylvania University of USA. No need any introduction or descriptions. He is well known to India also in a tradition. Among the traditional scholars, he is well known to. Because I also got an opportunity to attend his class organized by Kerala University and Sri Shankaracharya University in a workshop. And his Sanskrit spoken speech, Sanskrit language is very simple and lucid. And we are all envy of him. How simply he speaks Sanskrit. A foreigner can pronounce in the intonation, the same pronunciation is very appreciable. So George Cardona is honor for us. His presence is an honor for us, Kandalur. I express my thanks and gratitude to him. And keynote paper is presented by Reduplication and Syllable Structure in Paninian tradition is presented by Peter M. Scott, Professor, Brown University, USA. So he's, I heard that he is the student and disciple of Professor George Cardona. He is a great student of the great master. Is in history, Socrates, Plato, and they are well known. In the same way, in Vyakarana, he says that he is Abhinava Panini. George Cardona is called Abhinava, and his student is also suitable for that name. So I express my thanks on behalf of Kandalur Shala to him also. Then the Heike Oberlin, and her Indian name is Dr. Priya, and she is the professor at Tubingen University, Germany, and her paper is Role of Woman in KUTIYATTAM. And when we listen her lecture, we can understand the deep knowledge and understanding of Kerala culture and performing arts. And it is very difficult to understand how she collected all these materials. And personally also, her paper actually is a showcase, has to keep in a showcase to make a model for Indian students. Her keen interest in research shows her paper. So shows in her paper. So I extend my thanks to Heike Oberlin for her learned and research paper. I once more extend my thanks to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Shanti Padha.
Yes, thank you again to the organizers. Again.
Thank you. Bhadram
Thank you, thank
karnebhih shrunuyama devaah. Bhadram pashyema akshabhiryajatraah. Hirairangai stushtuvam saspanubhi. Vyashema devahitam yadayu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you very much.
Now we are closing the session.